You guys are so well behaved. Just all quiet down before our meeting starts at 8:30.
I thought maybe I was late this morning because everyone was here on time. So
We like some friendly chit chat time. Sure. Depending on which clock you look at, it's 8:30. So Paul is recording. He's our AV assistant today. So Paul, we'll go ahead and start recording if you can hear us.
Thank you. Recording has started.
All right. Thanks, Paul. I'm Elissa Richards, chairperson of the Utah Geological Survey Board, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Utah Geological Survey Board to order. It is now 8:30 a.m. on August 12, 2026. This meeting is held both in person and virtually with Google Meet. In compliance with Utah's open meeting laws, this meeting is being recorded in its entirety. The recording is classified as a public record, and the following board members are in attendance: Elissa Richards, Ken Fleck, Becky Hammond, Neil Burt, Riley Brinkerhoff, Michael Hansen, Rich Gordon, and Andy Bedingfield from Silla. And 0 board members are absent. That's great. The following individuals representing the UGS Geological Survey and the Department of Natural Resources are in attendance: Darlene Batatian, Stephen Kirby, Nguyen Seymour, Cheryl Wing, Mike Vanderberg. I know we had a couple more come in, but I think you're going to introduce us.
We will introduce
them
them.
during
Yeah, we
yours.
have new staff to introduce.
I know, that's exciting. We're always excited to meet new staff. And then do we have any other guests?
My name is Lacey Moore.
Oh.
Legislative Assistant.
That's right. Okay. Welcome, Lacey. And we welcome all visitors and interested persons. As a courtesy to everyone participating in this meeting, at this time we ask for all cell phones, pagers, and other electronic devices to be turned off or changed to silent mode. Board motions and votes will be reflected in the minutes and recorded by individual board member. And let's now proceed with the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we could get our slides to change. Now what? Sorry, excuse me. My presentation is being messy. Okay, sorry about the delay. First item is action items for the board.
Okay. Right, I'd like to propose a motion to approve the minutes from the April 15th, 2026 board meeting. Who would like to formally first, and will somebody second? Okay, first and second. Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the UGS board meeting April 15th, 2026, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, it's a unanimous decision that the UGS board meeting minutes from April 15th, 2026 have been approved.
Next item is approval of project proposals.
All right. Okay, there we go. There's our, and we've been seeing a lot of those come across our desk. This is great. I would also like to have a formal approval of all of the projects that we have reviewed since our April board meeting. All of those, I'd like to have a motion to approve those.
So moved.
So we can, and a second.
I second.
Becky, thank you. Let's go ahead and have a vote. All of those be formally approved. The contract proposals from the April meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Those, all of the contract proposals since our April board meeting have been unanimously approved. And we're off.
Thank you, Chair. Just watching these totals here, it's quite a significant amount of potential new income to UGS and new project work. Some of these are quite large, this multi-state geothermal. So, which kind of leads to our next agenda topic, which is opportunity to introduce a couple of our new staff members. So, looking at our project workload, particularly in the energy and minerals group and the groundwater and wetlands group, we we're very thoughtful, but have made the decision to hire some additional temporary staff. These are, minimum, probably a couple year roles for them. So if I can take a moment, I'd like to introduce Eitan. So Eitan has just joined our energy and minerals team. He's going to be working with Steph Mills. You can hang out back here. Yeah. So on the intrusive base map, do you want to just introduce yourself and a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So I just graduated from the University of Arizona, where I did my dissertation on ore deposits in the Paradox Basin, not too far from here. I have a little bit of experience in the industry as well, working for Lithium Americas and ExxonMobil, short stints. But I'm here to work with Steph Mills and the rest of the Energy and Minerals group on the intrusive base map project, and then help out a little bit with the BHP Export project as well. So put my education to work and see what comes next.
Yeah, so welcome. And you started 3 weeks ago?
End of June.
End of June.
Yeah.
Okay, so a month. Great. Yeah, I'm really happy to have Eitan on board. And then Stephen, Odd.
Hello, I'm Stephen. I'm a Utah native here. Just joined as the wetlands group. I'm working on a project right now with UGS Stern, where we're looking at the different laws that protect wetlands throughout the state, as well as developing more monitoring protocols with wetlands here in the state. My background, I have a master's degree in environmental science, where I worked with the Division of Air Quality, actually, passing some new rules with them. And then I've also worked as an environmental consultant with wetlands here in the state.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Really happy to have you on board too as well. So this was an example where I think we were looking for someone at kind of a lower level, and we're able to hire in somebody with more expertise and experience. And so really happy to have both of you guys on board. So welcome to UGS. And is this a good time maybe to just go around and do introductions? We do have a couple new people. We're still waiting for Brian to join us. Actually, we do have one more, I think. Well, we have a couple more staff news things, but maybe we'll just take a minute and do introductions. Sure. Or we can wait till Brian gets here. Is Brian gonna make it?
No, he is. Sorry, did you see my text message?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you see my text?
No.
Okay, so he did text me saying he had a family conflict this morning, but he will be here just a little bit later.
A little bit later, so
Yeah.
we'll just move things around in our agenda.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. I was trying to text you telling you I was on the way and that Brian was on the way, and sorry we didn't.
That's okay. I was probably working on setting up and then chatting here. Okay, that's fine. So maybe we'll wait till Brian gets here and then we'll do introductions. I'll just keep going with staff news. Do you guys remember Martha Hayden? Our longest, if not one of our longest,
Currently
serving
longest, yeah.
UGS members. Do you want to say a few words about Martha?
Martha has, again, she had 43 total years of state service. She came to us when the paleo program was incorporated into UGS. Before that, she was doing paleo stuff, but with state history. Her time here, she's basically been the heart of the paleo program. She's built a one-of-a-kind paleo site and resource database for the whole state that is used by CITLA, BLM, private folks all over the state to manage these resources. She also was one of the instigators and then main contributors to Utah Friends of Paleontology. That's a really active volunteer group. They've done all kinds of stuff for paleo in the state. She was involved in that for, I think, close to 40 years. So she finally retired. We wish her well in her retirement, but yeah, it's going to be kind of hard to replace this. She's left us those important legacy pieces of a really strong Utah Friends of Paleontology, and then this one-of-a-kind data set of paleo sites in Utah. So in the future, and I'm not sure if you have a slide on this, but we actually have a paleo job open that is just closed that we'll do a hiring process for, because she is the first of the paleo folks who's going to retire over the next couple of years. So we'll do some rolling openings to replace those folks.
Yeah, I don't really have a slide for this. So the paleo group and Stefan have really kind of built out a succession roadmap because coming on the heels of Martha retirements, Don DeBlue, our assistant state paleontologist, is also planning on retiring at the end of the year. And he and Jim Kirkland are like, you know, big brother, little brother. And so it's gonna be tough to see Don leave. And so what the paleo team is looking for is, in replacing Martha, we're really looking for that next level of, you know, a paleontology, you know, kind of leader, co-lead for the state. And that job position has been opened and I think just closed.
Recently closed, we have 76 or 78. We've got a bunch of strong applicants. We'll go through a multi-stage hiring process. We'll hope to make a decision probably early or middle of September and then see when we can get somebody in the door. We're being kind of open-minded in terms of skill sets. There are some things that we certainly need, like the ability to prep fossils and do field work, but we're really trying to find the right person for the next couple of decades in the program and start that turnover process.
So if you're a paleontologist out there in the world and you see this job opening here in Utah, it's really a kind of a world-class opportunity to come work for a state geological survey that has incredible paleontology resources. And Jim and Don have really laid, and Martha really have really laid the foundation for who comes next in this role. So it's a great opportunity. And paleontology, for me personally as director, is something that I think we should really be leaning into. I think we could do more by our paleontology resources in Utah. So yeah, we said farewell to Martha. She had a heck of a retirement party too. She has a big network out there.
She is well loved, yes.
It was. Service awards. We have 2 service awards to celebrate. Well, actually, we have a number of service awards to celebrate. Star Solis, I know one of our executive assistants, who, along with Cheryl, just carries a huge load for UGS with almost 90 people. We have a lot of administrative responsibilities and, you know, they do so much for us. Star's been here for, it's hard to believe, but for 20 years. Cheryl's got her beat by what, a couple? 8?
Almost 20 years.
Oh my gosh. So we're really lucky to have that kind of institutional knowledge and longevity for us. She helps our team out every day. And then Steph Carney, our lead editor, who combs through all of our publications and survey notes articles, and does a great job for us. She's written our style guide. She takes great care of all of our publications. Some 5-year service awards. Jackson Smith is part of our Geologic Information and Outreach group. He, for a long time, has been focused on education, particularly Earth Science Week and that kind of thing. We've asked our GIO team to do more in terms of public outreach, so he's really helped us move into conference planning, outreach for our geologic hazards as we publish maps and really need to connect with local communities. So he's been kind of a go-to guy for me in those efforts as well. And I really appreciate him. He's a great communicator. Tori Duncan is a geotech, I believe, in our hazards group, and has also really been expanding her capabilities. She's a drone pilot now. She's helping with landslide stuff. She recently pitched a proposal to us and did a great job just kind of building the budget for that. So she's been here for 5 years. And then Kayla Smith is in our energy and minerals group. Mike, do you want to say a word about what Kayla's working on?
She's slotted under our geothermal geophysics team, so does a lot of geophysics fieldwork, gravity, TDM, MT, and then also takes that data and does a lot of the processing and interpretation. She's a drone pilot, does a lot of drone work, drone-based LiDAR. Yeah, UGS said to our geophysics.
Thank you. And then 10 years for Jen Miller, our lead graphics designer and publications manager, who again is just an integral asset for everything that goes out the door. She makes it look good. Her team makes it look good. She does our calendar. survey notes. We're working on an annual report. So again, just a huge integral part of our work. We talk a lot about the science that we do. We often don't talk enough about the people who are kind of behind the scenes, making that science accessible to everybody that we reach. So I really appreciate that. And then 15 years for two of our geoscientists, Adam Hiscock. Adam Hiscock is in our geologic hazards group. He is one of our lead earthquake scientists. Both field and in terms of publication. He supported the Utah Seismic Safety Commission, kind of as the commission's secretary. He's recently stepped into a role with the Utah Earthquake Engineering Research Institute, again, as the secretary. He's pretty connected out there. Great field geologist. We recently promoted him to a senior geologist. And I think he's on a Colorado River trip right now. And then Christian Hardwick, who's been leading, leader in our energy and minerals team. He's really leading out on our our geothermal work. Anything else you want to add about Christian?
Christian has a huge breadth of knowledge when it comes to geophysics, surface geophysical techniques. For many of those 15 years, he was kind of working behind the scenes in the geothermal world before geothermal exploded the last few years. And a lot of that foundational work is being used today by geothermal companies in Utah. Like Fervo is drilling in the Black Rock Desert based on work that Christian did 10 years ago. And so it's nice to see him kind of more elevated now. And he's been extremely successful in getting very large DOE funded projects. He was instrumental in us getting that very large geothermal building block from the legislature. So, he's really stepped up, and it's fun to see him finally get some recognition for all the work he's done over many years.
Yeah, geothermal is having a moment, kind of like critical minerals. So, and again, Christian's project workload has become robust enough that we're additionally looking to hire someone to support him in that role as well. So.
Level of geothermal geophysics person, hopefully soon, next week maybe.
So again, these new hires that we've made are really intentional. We've looked at our staff bandwidth. We've looked at the amount of grant funding that has come in to be able to execute that work. We're really careful about hiring, and that work, has long legs. Those, budget numbers are pushing out 2 to 3 years, and we really do want to be intentional about hiring. So, the addition of Stephen, of Eitan, of the geothermal project geologist, and our paleontology replacement, have been pretty well thought out here. But we're also excited to add to our team the geothermal work that is out there, the minerals work that is out there, the groundwater and wetlands work that is out there. That is what the state is asking from us, and the funding is out there. So let's do the good science and bring the people in to get it done. Next in my slide deck was welcoming Brian Summers, the Executive Director of the Utah Mining Association. So he'll be here, he's just running late. So if you don't mind, should I just continue with the director's report?
Yes.
Thank you. So we'll come back to that when Brian arrives. And we'll do introductions when he gets here too. Okay, so I'll just.
Have you hired the new mapping?
He did.
Oh,
yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, he doesn't. So we hired David Canova. It was a lengthy process, very competitive. He'll be joining us after completing his PhD. He's got mapping skills at various scales, regional, cross sections, stratigraphy. He's an interesting candidate. He's a native of the Intermountain West, went to Fort Lewis College, I think, initially, and then did a master's, and then he's completing a PhD in kind of salt tectonic stuff.
In Spain.
In Spain, yeah. He'll be joining us in early October. And his focus area will be the Utah's West Desert, basically. And the point of getting him here now is to overlap with Don Clark, who will be retiring in the future.
Yeah, so that big scale mapping, right? So one of the things I was really intrigued about with David Canova as a potential hire is he spent some time as a USGS map editor. Is that his role? Mappings and publication skills are just incredible. Like his maps are beautiful products. Like he understands that. And I think having him come into our mapping and even our GIS team may level us up a bit, right, in terms of what we do and what we're able to produce. So it'll be exciting to see. I think he's going to integrate into our mapping team really well. So. Speaking of publications then, let's go through them because it's been a busy time since we last met. Survey Notes came out recently, and we actually are working on our next issue of Survey Notes right now. That will be the last September issue of Survey Notes, I think, that we'll do. We're going to start reducing the number of survey notes and putting out an annual report in December, I believe, is our target. And that's really a document that we can tee up for the legislature to kind of showcase what UGS has been working on through the year and help the legislature understand our role and how we put the money that they give us to use. Statewide inventory of Utah's significant mine waste features. So this was a large compilation, took kind of a super team of GIS folks as well as Claire Decker to put together all of the mine waste features. Mike, is that like a single map with a supporting document?
So that's basically a GIS compilation of all the, we use significant mine waste features in the state, and we paired that with as much mineral occurrence data that we have so that we can, there's a lot of disclaimer language in the report, but so that we can provide a very high level inventory of where mine waste is and what could potentially be in it for people who are interested in it for a whole variety of reasons. So Claire did a great job on this. I think this will be one of the foundational data sets that we kind of use and that we get asked for quite a lot. So we're very excited to have that done.
We will be very interested.
Yeah, okay, I didn't even see that. I'm looking at the back of Mike's head most of the time, so.
Awesome. Pilot study to evaluate measurement of evapotranspiration in Phragmites down in Farmington Bay. So if you follow the Great Salt Lake News, Phragmites is an invasive reed. It has taken over tens of thousands of acres, probably along the edge of the Great Salt Lake, and it consumes a great deal of water. And so one of the issues with trying to get water to the Great Salt Lake is that these stands of Phragmites are in the way. And so our groundwater and wetlands teams have been installing these really cool flux towers. They're called eddy covariance towers. This is something that Paul Inkebrant has been leading out. They're super technical. There is a nationwide flux network that the data gets kind of shared out to, but installing one in a stand of Phragmites allowed them to try to get a better handle on the actual evapotranspiration rate of Phragmites, which is tied to how much water it actually consumes. Managing Phragmites and treating it has been an interagency effort. It's forestry, fire, and state lands, it's wildlife resources, it's our information on the data side. And so this data really matters to the efforts to treat and eradicate Phragmites. The TLDR version of this is it does use less water than we thought. We thought it used 4 times the amount of water as maybe a more typical wetland vegetation. It's more probably in the range of 2 to 3 times as much water, but that's still a lot. I think the actual data point was 36 inches a year of water that it consumes, which if you look at how dense a stand of Phragmites is, and there are photos of these stands in this report, that's still a lot of water. So in my book, for restoration of the Great Salt Lake, Phragmites is public enemy #1. And this study will go a long ways, I think, to try to help manage it. And then here come the state map deliverables, right? You wanna kind of go through these? Mills Junction, this was Emily's and Adam's map. This is
Yeah, so we, in the descriptive packet, I describe the full tranche of deliverables,
Okay.
basically, that we provided the USGS at the end of June. We delivered on time for the third straight year. We published more of our maps than ever before. We also included more digital data than ever before. So let's see, we started off with Mills Junction, that's in Tooele Valley, it includes a bunch of the Great Salt Lake. It's basically all lacustrine deposits. There's one little piece of bedrock and smolder basin fill, but it's all lacustrine deposits from very, very young up through Bonneville age. Let's see, north part of Real Creek. This was a trainer quad for Keeley. She did a great job on this. This includes part of Castle Valley and the Sand Flats Wreck area. It actually is a nice map for hazard stuff going forward. This is a well-loved and used area. This will help folks manage that area. Then we had a kind of a cleanup map on Santaquin. This was a piece of work that Adams had out there for a while. I'm a contributor on there as well. And then Ron Harris from BYU. It's a really cool map. Complicated, severe structure, Wasatch Fault stuff, Bonneville, and some volcanics. Old Jetto, that's our first map for the Navajo Nation. So that's down just east of Monument Valley. We went down to them and asked what they wanted. We did this map to help them with water resources. That's Matthew's first map down there. We also we had a press release that just came out yesterday afternoon that we shared with the USGS and the Navajo Nation about this map because it's unique. So kind of some national level press on that one.
Are we going to see that on our field trip?
We are, yeah, we'll talk about that. We're basically gonna do a field review of that map on that first day of the field trip. The next one, the geologic map of Bryce, that's another wonderful map. It'll help folks manage the resources down there. It's already really popular. It's been like our most downloaded map and one of our most downloaded publications since it came out. It's got a great cross section, great pictures, strat columns. It's a neat map.
Geologic hazards that were mapped as part of this that should really help the park managers as well, so.
But a gorgeous map, and that also will build into a piece of work that we hope to complete in the next fiscal year, which is a revised geologic map of the whole park of Bryce.
Geez, wow, guys been busy. It's a stack.
Yeah.
This first one is an outside publication. So was somebody a contributor on this from ENA?
So Christine and Scott are at USGS here in town, the Water Science Center. And the Great Salt Lake Salinity Advisory Committee, Andrew and Elliot participate on that.
Sorry, I didn't realize this was in the middle of state map, so.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Woodland was another one. That's one of Lauren's quads. So now we have new mapping that covers basically the areas that are most likely to be developed in Summit County coming up. One of the adjoining quads has been consistently used by consultants. The Woodland quad's really cool. It's got kind of the tip out of the South Flank Fault that bounds the UNS. It's got some really neat structures, some cool stratigraphy, volcanics. Lauren did a great job. It also has, that quad's really cool. It's got these what look like really old glacial deposits. So things that are pre kind of Bull Lake age. They're way up high. We're working on some folks from University of Minnesota trying to get those dated. Could be a cool story there. Summit Quad, that includes part of the Parowan Valley and adjoining uplands. That's a map that's been rolling around for a little while. Tyler finally published. Let's see, North Ogden, that's another one that's been rolling around. That's got some really complicated severe belt structures, and then a bunch of Bonneville stuff, Wasatch Fault stuff, and big liquefaction features too. So it'll be real important for hazard kind of mitigation stuff.
Awesome.
Could you remind me the term interim applied to all these? What does that?
So well, that actually builds into something else that we're working on in mapping. It's kind of revising how we publish or map the actual publication titles. We use interim. We use that to say that this isn't final. it has known issues that we didn't address yet. And sometimes those are outstanding lab work. Sometimes there's known problems that we haven't figured out yet. We don't feel that it's final, and that's why it's an OFR. We are looking at kind of changing this and going to more of a versioned map series. So if you look at the quality of these interim maps, they're every bit equivalent to our old final maps, if that makes sense. So there's really no, we'll probably move into a mode where we're not doing as many open file maps in the future. We're doing a map series map that then gets versioned and updated as like lab data comes in or we figure out a given area.
Okay. And the OFR, that's like your first draft?
Yeah, that's the first draft.
Okay.
Yeah, but like I say, these first drafts these days, have all those are DMs, so they all have full digital data. The quality of these products it's in many times greater than what we were doing like 15 years ago for our final publications. So it's an instance where I think we need to adjust our publication series a little bit to fit what we're actually doing.
Is there a timeline associated with so you identify something as an OFR report? Or are you trying to get it finalized within like 5 years, 10 years?
That's one of the issues. So
Question.
that's a great question. So for maps to meet our contract requirement, we just have to publish. They don't care whether it's an OFR, map series, or whatever we want to call it. We just have to publish. So that leaves us in a position when we publish these things, it's hard to come back to them, right? It's hard to get money for it. Many of these OFRs need a small amount of work. They need like a few weeks of work. It's hard to get money for that. And thereby it's also hard to plan for it. It's hard to say, oh, we're gonna do it this year versus 2 years or 5 years or whatever. So
a lot of it comes to edge mapping too, right? Where you're trying to get the edge.
that's one of the fundamental issues in here too. Does this make sense versus the adjoining mapping? So, but we are actively working on revising the publication, what we call publications via map series or OFRs to account for this in the future.
There's always a lot of stratigraphy. Like they got map lines, but the stratigraphy got bad names on it or something.
And these things are always works in progress. That's why I want to go to this idea of version maps. So it'll be version 1, version 2, version 3. They're never really fully done. There's always things you can improve. So
do you know or even keep track of how this level of production of maps stacks up against other states?
yeah, I have an idea of that. I mean, that's a whole other topic. We're kind of in the top. We're in
some Colorado maps are feel really good about them.
Yeah, we're in the top like 4. We're in the top 4 or 5 in the country nationally in terms of map production and then map quality. Which is that's a big deal because we're up against some organizations that are much larger than ours, like California, Illinois.
Okay, well, perfect timing before we move to the next topic because Brian Summers has been able to join us. So I thought we'd take a minute to introduce Brian and then we can do introductions maybe while I try to load your slides for you. So why don't we start with you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Summers in the Prison League of Mining Association. So I've worked with a few of you before, but I'm very happy to be here and I appreciate the invitation. Thanks for being flexible with my schedule too. I had some extra dad duties this morning that I hadn't anticipated, so sorry to be a little late.
Absolutely fine. Yeah. So yeah, really glad you could join us.
Brian, you know me, I'm Rich Borden. We go way back from the dog and board, but I'm now on the UGS board representing the mineral industry.
And I'm Andy Bedingfield, Managing Director of Energy and Minerals with SITLA. SITLA has a non-voting place on this board, and so I fill that seat.
I'm Ken Fleck. I'm a retired coal geologist, formerly from Energy West Mining Company down in Price.
Brad McGruffy, oil and gas. Mike Vandenberg here at UGS, head of the Energy and Minerals Group.
Nguyen Seymour at UGS. I am the finance manager.
Elissa Richards, the board chair, the CEO of the National Energy Foundation.
I'm Cheryl Wing. I'm with UGS. I'm the administrative assistant and the board secretary.
Lisa Moore, legislative
I'm Neil Burke. I'm a hydrogeologist. My role on the board is the groundwater section.
I'm Becky Hammond, and I'm a retired geologist. And I represent scientific interests on the board.
Michael Hansen, I'm an engineering geologist. I represent civil and geotech engineering.
And I'm Stephen Kirby. I'm the Deputy Director of Geological Survey.
Then Steph.
I'm Stephanie Mills. I help with critical minerals in the survey. Sorry, I was also late. I also had unexpected kid duties this morning, so Brian and I were in the same boat. Happens.
While we get Brian's presentation loaded, do you guys want to just take like a little break or something, and then Brian's back on the hot seat here? Trying to get all this. Yeah, sure.
Do we want to do our, this won't be our formal break, just a quick.
Just quick break, if you need a quick break.
I'm good.
You sure can, oh, yes. Great. I think the only.
Oh, we can shake that. That's fine.
I think I was gonna say, so there's both
So if you have the calendar.
You just like to know.
Yeah, so I just finished up that meeting
Should actually.
It should come up on the, yeah, it should actually.
There's a lot of permitting challenges because they're on the backside of wildlife refuge, and they're on the front side of the buffer of the UGS.
Sorry, for everyone online, if there's anyone online, we're gonna take a break while we get Brian's slides loaded up. I'm gonna stop presenting.
They're a little bit challenging there, but it's just really far from infrastructure, so that's like a huge challenge for them as well. But it's a really nice resource.
Stop presenting. If you wanna
There's
help
been this
Brian
talk
get
about mineral processing.
to the.
Department of Defense ground. So it's actually mostly natural, but then it's copper and so it's the only premium. They have had
Got a pretty decent sales.
I think they're really also to try and yeah, but the processing, the problem when you go with a very strong poly market, like polymetal advertising is that you have to go process those metals, and that's the issue, is they're far from processing facilities. So I saw something recently. I need to pull up on it. Some company is gonna be able to come into that way.
Your share. What other name?
Trump was basically trying to say like, well, if we have shortage of mineral processing facilities, then it's very hard to permit them. Use Department of
Yeah, you might
Defense
have to bring
ground.
the slide.
So that way you really
Make it hard though, right?
Huh?
You need to make it hard on us. It's free.
I don't know if it's DOD specifically, I think it's just hard where it is, water well.
Actually, just showing up.
It
They do,
is,
yeah.
it looks like it's
yeah.
on the
Water
meeting.
is
Great.
They were probably good to go.
They also have to just
Let everybody take a little break for a sec. Kind of on the sugar.
So.
Did you say that was the last
Big research.
I did.
They still have hope for it.
We went
It's just
to Texas.
they're actually in a country conference.
My brother did the army.
Yeah.
Right over the top.
They also have
So we
a
have
yeah.
a fruit car, patio next to the valley.
So they actually have two projects currently.
I don't.
They're really, I love American life. There's so much right now.
Both of them.
It's Common Warrior, it's, so Lisbon Valley is northwest south.
Yeah, Richard
It's
said
Warrior, basically. No, it's just copper, so it's not green, but
Very busy with lots of DC.
Those are the only two that.
Once you piece all that together, you say.
Yes, so and it's also, they're thinking for private. Oh, sorry, I just said that.
I just want to read the interview.
Well, that's a school, yes.
Yeah, well, that's good.
I'm not a geologist either.
But I've been around, I've been doing this for about 8 years, so and my dad was. Yeah, it's good. Yeah,
way to make them. He knows the area.
And that's where I'm not sure what they would plan to do on site. They would do well to do as much of the design on site because of the expensive trucking.
Yeah, we stay out.
But I haven't actually, they haven't put out a.
And basically tell them.
Last year.
We're water rights.
Hear how the
We don't get too involved in space to work at the
They
page.
have-
We're not gonna take sides. Makes total sense.
So there was a big.
It's, the technology is straightforward. All that expertise and personnel. But, you know, that last bill, that Mikel bill last year, kind of made the line and.
Yeah. What about that one on
White Mesa.
Yeah, that's a weird area. He was really great to us. He carved out for Sitla. That was our big.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're probably water system, so
Well, like, add money. So there you go. Okay, fire.
Okay, so that's why I'm just a little more excited than I should.
Yeah, so Gabby, we hired Gabby.
And it's your bill.
Doing a great job.
And I think he was involved. There's been one or two more.
More like.
All right.
Yeah.
Boom, good back.
Thanks for coming.
Yep, let's go ahead and call the meeting back to order. No. How's that? We do have one, I haven't seen it though.
All right. We'll come back to our meeting. Again, we're really happy to have Brian here. Brian was part of my interview panel when I was interviewing for this job. And one of the questions I asked him was, what do you need from UGS and what do you need from me in particular? So I'm really happy that he's been able to come on, visit our board and share a little bit about you, Utah Mining Association. There is time for discussion after this. One of the topics to discuss is we will be recruiting a new board member that represents industrial minerals, so we can have a little chat about that. Andrew Ruffke, who is our industrial minerals lead, unfortunately, is on a field trip with legislators. Took the state plane down somewhere, I'm not sure where.
Southeast Utah.
So sorry he can't be here. We'll continue that discussion, but I guess I'll turn it over to Brian, who's prepared a presentation for us. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to come and present. So I talked to Darlene and Stephanie a little bit beforehand about what to present. And to be honest, this is what I do a lot of presentations, and this one I haven't quite known how to prepare for because I haven't worked with the UGS board, I'm sure, as much as I should have. And so something I thought might be useful is just to give you guys a sense. I get asked to do a lot of presentations, especially on kind of the state of the mining industry and what's happening in mining. And so I thought what I'd do is just do a very abbreviated version of the presentation that I tend to give out in public. I'm gonna go through some of these slides very quickly because frankly, a lot of them are based on data that you guys have produced. And so you don't need me to talk to you about what critical minerals we have or whatever. But I thought that it might be just an easy way to sort of start the conversation, and then As Darlene mentioned, I'd love to have some, discussion and answer any questions, and I'll have some questions for you as well. So if that's okay. Again, I'm gonna go through this pretty quickly, so if you do want me to stop on something, please don't hesitate to just, pipe up and let me know.
Sorry, I shouldn't be presenting, so.
Well, I think you can just
Just maximize your.
maximize it, yeah, and then you'll be able to see it.
Sorry,
You're fine.
where am I going here?
Just say cancel and then go up to the window thing. There you go. That
Sorry
should-
about that, thank you. And then, how do I close? Sorry, I'm just looking for a way to maximize the screen here and minimize the.
I think if you hit the three dots towards the middle. Yeah, that one, and then go to full screen.
There.
Thank you. Oh, it's better.
Yeah, he's a little forward.
Okay, so usually when I give presentations, I kind of start by talking about Utah's mining history. I'll always mention, this is my favorite part of the Capitol, when you go into the cyclorama and the rotunda and you see General Connor, there's a panel of General Patrick Connor inaugurating mining in the state, commercial mining in the state in 1863. There's two beautiful paintings in the governor's office of the Bingham Canyon mine by H.L.A. Comer, who's a very famous Utah artist. We actually had these removed for a show at the Utah Museum of Fine Arts a number of years ago, and that was incredibly controversial because it's the only time that they've been out of the governor's office. Obviously, if you go up to the Capitol, you'll see Daniel Jacklin. He's finally back on his perch in the courtyard there after all the construction. And of course, we always have to remind the governor that he lives in a house that was, built with mining money in the Kearns Mansion. One of the first, what I like to call, economic development initiatives that was ever created by the territorial legislature way back in 1854 was actually a cash reward for anybody that could find coal within 40 miles of Salt Lake City. Nobody actually was able to claim this reward. Ultimately our coal was found a little bit further away from Salt Lake, but this was, the recognizing very early on in our state's history how important minerals and especially energy minerals were. And then of course we always have to remind people when they go to great places like Park City and Moab, that those obviously started out as mining towns and have a really rich mining history. And part of obviously what brings people to Utah and mining is that we've got such an amazing mineral endowment, geological endowment here. These are just some of the minerals that are being produced in Utah. Again, the critical minerals, I won't spend too much time on this because, we have experts here that I know I've stolen most of this from. One thing I do like to talk about is showing the mineral commodity summary that comes from the US Geological Survey. And obviously when I show this slide, nobody can actually read it, but I always just say, blue is bad on this chart, right? Blue means that we're import dependent for these important mineral commodities. And, that's obviously a challenge for us. So, 50% import dependence for 52 different mineral commodities, more than 50% import dependence, and 100% for 16 different mineral commodities. So, that represents a real national security threat for our country, especially because China is the leading import source for most of those minerals. And just, to give one example of many you could give, just with rare earth elements, how many rare earths go into things like an F-35 Lightning or an Arleigh Destroyer or a Virginia-class submarine. 9,200 pounds of rare earths. That's something that actually really blows my mind because, as rare earths are, usually used in fairly small quantities. So to have 9,200 pounds in a Virginia-class submarine is quite a thing. And the wonderful number that you guys have come up with that we host 50 to 60 critical minerals. You guys have to do this every few years to update that number, but I love that we've got nice 50 out of 60. That was much better than the 48 out of 60 that I had come up with. So luckily you guys corrected me on that. And then the way that I've sort of talked about this, which is slightly different than I know you guys take obviously a much more scientific view, and I'm more of a an advocacy guy, a marketing guy. And so what I talk about is, minerals where we have current production or what I call installed capacity. And so these are minerals that, we have produced in the recent past where we actually have the facilities where we could be producing them again, even if we're not currently doing it. I think a really great example of this is vanadium. We haven't actually done a vanadium run at White Mesa for, I don't know, Stephanie, 2 or 3 years probably.
Vanadium, probably like
Yeah, but I mean, we can produce vanadium if we need to. Magnesium's a little more tricky right now, but I mean, we do have the facilities to do that. And so, I mean, this is what I like to talk about, where again, we have either current production or installed capacity. We have, historical production or known resources. And again, I'm sure that the scientists in the room, would quibble with, my classifications here, but just to make the point that in many cases, we have produced significant quantities of these minerals in the past, or we have, known resources where you could go out and produce them in mining terms, relatively short order, because the resource has been proven. And obviously indium is the one we always kind of point to with this, although there's, lots of examples of that. And then I talk about critical mineral projects. We do have like the occurrences and everything else, but I mean, that tends to sort of, distract a little bit from the message that, hey, you should come and invest your money here. So I will talk too about critical mineral projects that are currently in development in Utah. And these are all in various stages. So, I mean, there's, things like, copper projects that are much further along, and other ones that are definitely still more in development or, study phase. I haven't really figured out how to talk about ionic, so I just kind of call that our polymetallic deposit, because I don't know how else to talk about it. But it is pretty encouraging to see how this list has grown over the past few years, as we've seen more interest in critical minerals and more investment come both from the private sector and from government sources. This is a great thing that I totally stole from Rio Tinto Kennecott. Some of you, I'm sure, have seen this before, but this just shows that there is huge benefit in looking at our existing permanent operations, because a lot of them have potential to develop a lot more minerals than they're currently producing. So this is actually a chart that Don Wellman, who a lot of you guys know, actually presented at our conference a couple of years ago. And this has changed, but it shows like the critical minerals they're producing, the ones that they could produce kind of in the near term, and then things that they could do longer term. But a significant amount of minerals that could come out of just this one operation.
All out of Bingham Canyon?
Yeah, out of Bingham Canyon. And these all come from sort of different sources. And so in some cases, like the germanium and gallium, I mean, that's, potentially from their smelter dust. You have other things that could come from their acid mine drainage. There's other things that they believe are in the tailings pile that they could develop. And so, different sort of parts of the process where these minerals could potentially fall out and be produced. But again, a lot of this depends on, on market conditions and investment. And in most cases, Rio Tinto Kennecott's not going to make a lot of money on these critical minerals, which is one of the real challenges. But if they have a company, for example, that comes to them like with a tellurium, where they have a solar company and it says, hey, we don't want to produce our tellurium in China anymore, so we'd like for you guys to do it, and we're willing to pay the price to make that happen. The Defense Department's always bugging them about certain minerals like rhenium and other things. But there really does have to be, the market conditions or an off-taker that is willing to pay the higher prices, because obviously all of these can be produced more cheaply in China because they have labor environmental controls. So that's exciting. Another great example that we like to talk about, and again, as Darlene mentioned, there's a bunch of legislators and state officials that are going down to Energy Fuels today. But how Energy Fuels has been able to use their existing facility to start producing rare earths, where again, they're bringing in an outside mineral monazite. We've had to sort of talk about how we talk about rare earths, because we do have rare earths, present in the mineral endowment here, but what's actually being produced on the rare earth side are, from minerals that are being brought from out of state, but they're using, a feedstock of monazite that's being brought from out of state and potentially overseas in the future to, produce the rare earths. And the thing that I love about this, I mean, this is such a great story where, again, they essentially stole what they were doing from the Chinese, because the Chinese have been doing this for a long time. They said, hey, monazite, it's got all these rare earths, but it's also got a lot of uranium and thorium in it. We can deal with the radioactive elements and then, isolate the rare earths. At first, they were sending all these to Estonia, because that was the only facility outside of China that had the ability to do the separation of the individual rare earths. But then they built those circuits on their own, and now they're have announced an expansion to where they'll be essentially have the ability to produce any of the rare earths that are in the monazite, which is basically all of them. They've been doing neodymium and praseodymium for 2 or 3 years now. They've just announced terbium and dysprosium, and then with this expansion, once that's up and running, they can produce any of the rare earths, assuming again, there's an off taker. So again, a really great opportunity with a permitted operation that doesn't have to go through all of the new permitting challenges that can come with a mining operation that I know you're all familiar with. I talk a little bit about, some of the differences we've seen with this current administration that's very excited about producing critical minerals. There was just another event on Friday, actually last week, where the president announced another $3 billion of investment in the critical minerals sector. This doesn't always come in the most predictable or rational ways. And I'll talk about that a little bit later too, but it is great to see that the federal government has recognized that, this really is an economic national security issue for us to be so dependent on foreign producers for our critical mineral supplies. Part of the unpredictability of what the federal government is doing, they have made some really significant investments in places like Mountain Pass, in the antimony, the stibnite mine up in Idaho, and others. In some cases, I sort of wish that they had made some different investments. I think, Mountain Pass is a proven producer. Some of the other rare earth investments they've made are with what I would call very non-proven producers. Luckily Energy Fuels did get a loan guarantee from the Department of Energy for $750 million, which is huge. But some of the investments that have been made are really being made on the basis of, producers saying that they can do something, even though they don't really have a track record of doing those things. And that makes me a little bit nervous. Just me personally speaking, as Brian, I don't also love the equity stakes that are being taken in some of these companies. I don't necessarily worry about it with a friendly administration, but at some point we'll have an unfriendly administration, and having government ownership in mining operations with an unfriendly administration freaks me out. So it's been a little bit of a bumpy road, but we're in a much better place now than we were a few years ago. This is part of the problem we have. I stole this from Joe Manchin, who's no longer in the Senate, but and this has actually been simplified a tiny little bit, but not much. But this was the critical minerals ecosystem in the federal government, according to former Senator Joe Manchin. And all of you guys that have worked in the federal government understand how complicated this can be. So these are all the different agencies and offices that have some touch point in the critical minerals and materials ecosystem. And so even with a friendly administration, getting through existing bureaucracy, a lot of this obviously some of this was set up by statute, some of this was set up by rule and by the creative ideas of bureaucrats in Washington. And so this is a very complicated ecosystem still, and that's part of why we're also seeing a little bit of disjointedness with investment coming in, because there's so many different people that have touch points, frankly so many different people that have checkbooks and little weird pots of money. And so that's why there hasn't been sort of a unified funding effort as much as we'd like to see that. But this is, again, better than it was a few years ago, but still the federal government, so it's still very complicated. I also talk to folks about what I call the Diamond Mountain problem. And I don't know if any of you guys know this story. This is something that I learned a few years ago, but there is a mountain out in Uinta Basin that's called Diamond Mountain. And the reason for that, according if the stories are correct, is that back in the late 1800s, there were some very enterprising entrepreneurs that decided that they were going to sell shares in a diamond mine in Uinta County to some fairly sophisticated investors, actually. People like Louis Tiffany of Tiffany & Company, the guy that founded the Bank of California, were actually stockholders in this diamond mine. As I'm sure all of the geologists know, we don't have diamonds in Uinta County or anywhere in Utah. And so this was a total scam. They actually would go out there and they sprinkle raw diamonds just, in very, obvious places, and they take people in on a train, and then they blindfold them and they take them out to where they'd spread the diamonds. It was a total scam. And I do worry a little bit that, I don't know that we have outright scams today, but we definitely have people that are overselling their operations and overselling their ability to produce some of these critical minerals. And my concern as the industry guy is that, for every legitimate project, if you have an illegitimate project that gets attention and gets funding, it's taking away from those legitimate projects. I don't want, the cylinder of the mining industry to materialize so that, people say, oh, all these mining people are just a bunch of snake oil salesmen, it's a bunch of, garbage, and they can't really produce any of this stuff, and we should just go and be nice to China and whatever. And so, that's why it's very important for us to have good data, for us to make sure that the fundamentals of any mining project, whether that's those, the geological data, the technological data for how they're going to produce and process these critical minerals are real, so that, we don't end up having people invest in things that, are the modern day equivalent of diamond metal. Another thing I talk about is that, in the mining industry, we really do need patient capital. Nothing in the mining industry is like Silicon Slopes. You don't have somebody that starts a mining company in their garage, and then a year later they've got $1 billion valuation. That's just not how mining works. Most of these projects are very hard to get off the ground. In many cases, you're going to have many, many years until you actually get to profitability. In many cases, the margins are very, very small, although, they can obviously pay off over time. So it takes a different type of capital than, what is generally used in the venture capital space, which is, we want to invest in software companies. And again, we want to go from, a $1 billion valuation, from ping pong table to $1 billion valuation in like a year. And that just doesn't happen in the mining sector. That being said, we are seeing some new investors come in. This is actually a picture from what was the Lisbon Valley mine, is now called Mariana Copper One. And this is a mine that was acquired actually by some folks that came out of the Tesla world, out of the Tesla, lithium and some of the other critical mineral supply chains, and started their own company, and actually have brought a little bit of, that Silicon Valley investment ethos into the mining sector. And so this is actually an autonomous haul truck. You've got your little autonomous robot dog here, that does some of the site monitoring and other things. And so, it is very exciting to see this. They're using a lot of AI, a lot of machine learning, other things. They built this huge control center that they actually call the bridge, which is hilarious because they're a bunch of nerds. And, they have brought sort of that Silicon Valley ethos, into this mine that, had been operating very traditionally for a number of years. And it's exciting to see those two worlds come together. They're doing a lot of amazing work there. So it really is a great example. But again, luckily these guys have been in the mining and mineral space before. And so they do understand that even though they want to move a lot quicker than we have traditionally in the mining industry, it's still not, these quick turnaround type of operations. Anyway, this is a little quote from Secretary Burgum that, I always like to make the point that, if you want to invest in mining and you want to actually produce these minerals, you need to invest in the states where these minerals actually exist. So, when I see mineral investments going to, places like Louisiana or Oklahoma, it always bugs me a little bit, because those are, it's fine if you want to do processing there, but I'd much rather do the processing and have those investments in the states where the minerals actually exist, and where we have the expertise in the background to produce them, and the regulatory environment. And so that leads me to these last slides. Why do you want to invest in Utah? 163 years of commercial mining. We're a top mining global jurisdiction. I used to be really excited about the Fraser Institute survey when we were #1, but now we're not. And so I think it's a bunch of garbage now. But anyway, those bounce all over the place. But we do have a world-class modern mining industry here. We've been a top 10 hard rock mineral producer for a number of years. I don't know when the last time we were out of the top 10 is. I'm sure one of you guys would know that. But, been a top 10 mineral producer for a long time. We've kind of fallen out a little bit on the coal side with some production slowdowns, but we'll get back into the top 10 there as well. And then on the business side, a top state for business, high rankings for economic outlook and quality of life, things of that nature. A history of recruiting talent and businesses. We've got great research universities here, and then also a young population, which means that we have the potential for workforce growth in a way that other states don't, even though obviously we have a lot of workforce challenges with not as many people going into the mining sector and into some of the other disciplines that feed into the mining sector as we need. And that's something that we're working very hard on with the University of Utah and our other institutions of higher education here. And also, we have a culture of collaboration here. I think that, the state government works very well with industry. We try and work very well with our other states, with the federal government. We do have a lot of interstate collaboration here. So, I have very close relationships with all the other mining associations, Western mining associations. We actually just met a couple of weeks ago in Nevada. A history of regional partnerships, and also a great history of, federal and state partnerships. And so I think you guys just saw recently the announcement that there's going to be a couple of mineral processing facilities out of the Twilla Army Depot. We still know exactly what that looks like, to be honest, but again, it's just an example that, we can make sure that, if the federal government does have a project or a goal that, Utah can help to facilitate that. And so on that note, that's one of the reasons, I'll get to this. These are some of the things we've done over the last few years to try and expand the mining industry, the exploration tax credit, high-cost infrastructure tax credit, expanding EdTIF and inland port project areas. We want to make sure that there are investment incentives that are targeted specifically for the mining industry and other heavy industries, and not just the ones that have been there traditionally. Like EdTIF, for example. EdTIF is an economic or job creation tax credit that's been in use in Utah for a long time, but we've been able to expand it so it's more useful in the mining industry, it's more useful in rural areas, and just make sure that, again, we're providing the investment opportunities for Utah so that that capital can come here versus other places. So I want to just end by talking about, this is the governor's mission critical minerals policy framework. So this was a great example of something that had been happening for a long time with a lot of partners. We've had lots of discussions with the governor's office and with the legislature, with a lot of different agencies, including the UGS, the World Trade Center, AUI, like University of Utah. A lot of partners have been talking about how do we really put together a framework so that Utah can take a leadership position on the critical minerals front. The governor kind of took this and gave it a fancy name and some nice graphics. And so this is essentially what is in the governor's mission critical, that, we have increased permitting efficiency, that, we increase our permitting turnaround by, 50% to less than 18 months, where you can go from submitting a permit to actually having that permit granted. That we're capturing 20 to 25% of the U.S. domestic critical mineral demand, which, I think, given our mineral resources, it's not, it's a lift, but it's I think a reach goal, that we're retaining more of the economic value of that we're not just a mining state, that we also become a processing state, that we become a manufacturing state on the mineral front. Again, Energy Fuels is a great example of this, where not only are they going to be doing the processing for rare earths, but they also just announced that, they've acquired an Australian rare earth alloying company, and they're going to be creating an alloying facility here in Utah. And we'd love to then see, the manufacturing for rare earth magnets and other things also follow along there. And then also that we're a leader in innovation. And so I want to talk a little bit about the Mine Center. I'm sure many of you have heard about this. So this was created in some legislation that was passed in the last session, HB 254 from Senator Milner. And this created a number of things on the critical minerals front. First, it created a critical minerals council so that we'll have statewide coordination on critical mineral issues. And we've got representatives from the legislature and from industry and academia and DNR and other state agencies on there. But it also created, there's also some accelerated permitting and other things like that. But it also created what's called the Mine Center. So this is Minerals for Industrial, National, and Economic Security. And what we're envisioning with this is this would actually be a processing test bed and scale-up facility. So obviously there's a lot that's happening, with the universities and, being able to sort of test new processing on kind of a bench scale. But we want to be able to get from, that kind of kilogram level up to, a multiple ton per day level, to where we can actually, have industry come in and create design criteria for processing projects, so that then they can go and justify making those investments for standalone facilities at their operations. Also, there's the potential to, modularize some of these things to where, you could have some of these processing technologies that you can put in, shipping containers and get out to sites very quickly. And so the facility will be designed as that, you'll be able to bring in feedstocks from different mining operations and test different processing technologies, and using heat, using, chemical, using, flotation, other things like that. And, again, get from that sort of kilogram level up to a multiple ton per day level, so that you can, create those design criteria and make the investments that are needed. We'd like in the future to, make sure that all this is obviously, it has an AI lens. We've talked about, autonomous test beds, underground test beds and things like that. I think there's a lot of opportunities for growth in the future. So we actually got $11 million from the legislature to do sort of the first phase of this. And we're actually using that to lobby the federal government to try and get some national resources. With $11 million, I think we can create a very sort of nice state-sized facility, but ultimately we would like this to be sort of a national scale facility. And for that, we'd obviously need national resources. And so that's something that we're working very hard with the federal government to try and get some more national resources. And people have talked about this as, potentially becoming kind of a critical minerals national lab. I don't want to talk about national labs because that just freaks out the existing national labs, but I think this really could be sort of a national center of excellence for critical minerals and help to, be sort of the hub of a regional system too, where you, bring in opportunities that are happening in other states. But we feel that Utah is the place to do that. And partly because again, it's going to be much better to have a national sort of center of excellence in Salt Lake City where you can recruit people and where you've got all the logistical connections and, again, the high quality of life and all those things versus, trying to stick this in Ely, Nevada or Cheyenne, Wyoming. So obviously, reveals my state bias, but that's okay. So that's the end of my presentation. And yeah, I'd love to answer any questions or have some discussions about what we can do to support you guys.
How do you, so a question I have, I work with groundwater a lot. Like, what's your general response when people bring up concerns about the environmental consequences of, mining and things like that?
So a couple of things. I mean, one is that I think that people have to recognize that, first of all, these minerals are, if we don't produce them here, they're going to be produced somewhere else, and generally in places that don't have any environmental controls, that don't have any labor standards. And so I think, if you're really concerned about, the sort of worldwide, environment, then it's much better to produce minerals in countries that have stringent environmental and labor standards. And I also think that especially when a lot of the minerals exist in the West, water in particular is something that we really have to deal with. And, mining obviously can be water intensive, but I think that's part of the reason that we also need to make investments in research and innovation so that we can, reduce water usage. And even when there is sort of necessary water usage, even doing the research to figure out, how can we make sure that any water that is being used can be recycled, or if it does have to be released, to make sure that you're releasing, water that has the highest purity standards that we can have. And also, frankly too, if you're releasing water that doesn't, meet the kind of criteria you want to, obviously it has to meet, discharge criteria that, the state and the federal government require. But even with some of the dissolved solids and other things that are permissible in water releases, in most cases, those are minerals that could potentially be productively used. And so I do think, again, there needs to be more research and innovation so that we can figure out how to, be as friendly as possible. One of the challenges we have is that, we have had, we did have many years of not having those kind of environmental controls in the mining industry, and not just the mining industry. Most heavy industry. When I was born, you still didn't have to have seatbelts in your car, for heaven's sake. So, I think that these things evolve over time. But again, what happens today in the mining industry is so vastly different than what happened 50 years ago. But that legacy is something that gets kind of thrown in our face pretty frequently. So again, there's, a big contingent down in Southern Utah, and you never hear about what is happening in Southern Utah right now. You hear about what happened during the uranium boom back in the, 50s and 60s. But that's a legacy that has to be dealt with. But yeah, I do think that a lot of the technologies that are in use today are so much better than they were even a few years ago. And the mining industry is always looking to lessen its environmental impact. One, because that helps us maintain our social license to operate, but also because, frankly, that being able to minimize the amount of environmental impact is ultimately good for business, because I mean, you're not dealing with these kind of, legacy sites that are going to, require, maintenance and monitoring for years into the future. So.
I'd also add there's an equity and social justice component to this as well, because here in the West, we do enjoy a very high standard of living, a very mineral intensive standard of living. And by refusing to take on and manage our fair share of the resource impact globally, we're shoving that off into other countries and making them deal with the impacts and the outcomes, while we are the ones who tend to have the benefit of the very mineral resource intensive. So I also think there's kind of a global social justice and equity component to this, of the US needing to really start managing our fair share of the resources that make our lifestyle what it is today. So I do think there's a component of that as well.
And that's a great point. I mean, nobody's willing to, give up the, all the devices and, our cars and everything else that we use. And yeah, I mean, it is a little bothersome to me when you have people that'll, drive across town for a fair trade coffee bean, and they're, an electric car that's full of cobalt from, child miners in the Congo. So I mean, that's not acceptable. So I think that's something that does have to be dealt with, and we can deal with it. And it's not just the US. I mean, there's a lot of, responsible mining jurisdictions, but unfortunately, a lot of the minerals that are in use today are produced in very, unregulated jurisdictions, and, jurisdictions where things happen that, would appall the average, person in an industrialized country if they want to pay attention to it.
Could you just give us a thumbnail sketch of the Utah Mining Association, organization,
Yeah.
membership, etc.?
So the Utah Mining Association was founded in 1915, and so we're one of the older mining associations in the country. There's a couple that have us beat, Colorado and others, but that's okay. So we were created obviously to be an advocacy organization for the mining industry. Our founding members were actually what was the Utah Copper Company at the time, now known as Rio Tinto Kennecott. And we were actually created originally as a chapter of the American Mining Congress, which no longer exists, but we became independently incorporated back in the 60s. So our membership, we basically have most of the major mining operations in the state. We still have a few holdouts, so we always have to work on, and then a lot of service companies that work in the mining industries, and these can be anything from engineering firms to law firms to equipment providers to consumable providers. I mean, anybody that has a stake in servicing the mining industry and wants the mining industry to stay healthy, we try and go after them to be our members. So currently we've got a little over 180 members. Again, most of the major mining operations in the state, and then a lot of service members. And our primary responsibility as the mining industry are to be advocates. I mean, I'm a registered lobbyist. I do a lot of work with our legislature, with our state agencies, with local governments, and with the federal government, our federal regulatory agencies, our federal delegation. And so anything that is going to make it better to mine in Utah, we want to promote those policies, and anything that makes it a problem to mine in Utah, we want to try and fix those policies or make them go away. So in some cases that is, passing standalone bills like the critical mineral bills that I talked about. In some cases, it's just making little, tweaks to bills where there's just something where, maybe mining got pulled into it, inadvertently into a bill, and we just try and, get ourselves exempted out of those things. In some cases, those can be very specific to mining. In some cases, I worked on an insurance bill last session, which made me really cranky. But I mean, anything that, is problematic for our members, that particular insurance bill is going to be really costly to Rio Tinto Kennecott, because they have a high level of self-insurance. And so I had to get involved. And so, really anything, again, that's going to be damaging to the mining industry, we want to fight against those things. We also try and do a lot of public awareness, help people understand the modern mining industry versus, again, the industry from a long time ago. We do a lot of education work. So, we have people in the industry that we send into schools to do presentations, to help kids understand, where the minerals come from, where all the stuff in their phone and their toothpaste and whatever else comes from. We've also gotten very involved with STEM education efforts, because that's something where we want people to understand all the STEM opportunities that are available in the mining industry. So we have had a booth at STEM Fest for the last number of years that the state puts on, where you've got 14,000 kids coming through the Mountain America Expo Center and talking about STEM careers. We bring in always a big piece of equipment. So we had a massive front end loader last time, and the kids can come and climb in the bucket and climb up in the cab, and we throw hard hats on them and then talk about all the cool stuff you can do in mining. So we do a lot of that, and then also opportunities for business development and networking for our members. So we have a few big events every year. We have an awards gala where we recognize safety performance and also environmental stewardship and other things like that. We have a big golf tournament that we just had a couple of weeks ago where we give people an opportunity to come out and have a little bit of fun, do some employee recognition, but also give especially our service companies an opportunity to sell their services to the mine operators. And then we have a big convention in the fall. This year will be November 3rd and 4th at the Salt Palace, which we signed up for before they told us they were closing the Salt Palace, which is exciting. And give opportunities to talk about best practices, policy issues, and also networking and business development opportunities for our members. So we've actually had a number of UGS folks that have Andrew and Stephanie and Michael, I think, have all presented at our conference, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's a great opportunity for us. So when people ask me, probably I spend 90% of my time on lobby and advocacy activities, and then 10% on all that other stuff. So I'm here to be your friendly mining lobbyist. So. Great, thank you. Yeah.
I have a question about workforce.
Yeah.
So you mentioned workforce, and I think Rich and I were talking a little bit about workforce. What's the, what does it look like out there? And I guess from our industry members on the board, how is the workforce looking out there? Are we finding the people with the right education that we need to do the work? And if this really does expand, who do we hire? Where do we find them?
Yeah, and I'd love to hear your impressions on this. Workforce is a real concern. We're frankly just not graduating enough mining engineers and geologists and chemical engineers and all the other people we need in the mining industry. And I do think, again, that especially the federal government and our universities have recognized that this is an issue. So Congressman Burgess Owens from Utah actually had this mining schools bill that he's been trying to pass for the past few years. He actually was able to get that language into what's called the National Defense Authorization Act, which is one of the few kind of must-pass bills every year. It's gotten it on the House side. We're hoping that the language stays in there in the Senate side, but that would give some additional resources to mining schools to be able to go out and recruit more students. I will say that, with the University of Utah, that's our College of Mines and Earth Sciences is at the University of Utah. And, we went through kind of a challenging period with the university, where we just didn't feel like the administration was giving the support that was needed for the college. And I feel like that's really turning around. President Randall's been which are combined but separate, which
We don't talk about the College of Mines and Earth Sciences
anymore. Pearl Sandick, she's doing a really great job. We've got some good people that are committed to making sure that we're out, recruiting more students and also just helping people again understand the opportunities that are available. There's still work that needs to be done there. We still don't have an economic geology.
Really sent an email about this yesterday. The thing is too about that workforce is we still are kind of treating workforce in silos from everything I see. It's like the mining engineers, the metallurgists, the geologists, but for example, an economic geologist, we don't have one we don't have one in the state of Utah actually right now. I think I and my team are the only public facing economic geologists in the state right now. But you don't need that person just to train more than geologists. You need that person to also train your engineers, to also train your metallurgists, to also train your chemical engineers, because it ultimately all comes down to what we call ore body knowledge and ore body characterization. Ultimately, all comes down to the character of the rock. So it's hard, hard trying to get people to listen.
Yeah, so things are definitely getting better. I mean, there used to be this weird silo between the College of Engineering and the College of Mining, and that's breaking down. Things are much better than they were a few years ago. Again, there's still a lot of work to be done. There's still many more resources that are needed. Both again in terms of student recruitment. I mean, the facilities at the U definitely need updating. They're very antiquated. And also there's other universities that, are interested in getting into, helping with workforce development and haven't quite figured out how to do that. And we're trying to help on that. Utah State University actually had a bill that would have given them resources to do a study on creating a mining engineering, like what it would have taken to create a mining engineering program. And that kind of broke down when the previous president left. And so hopefully they're going to run that again this year. Some of the tech colleges and, the smaller universities are interested in helping on the kind of skilled trade side, because that's one thing I love about mining is, we need everybody. We need people that are coming right out of high school and can just get on the job training all the way up to, PhD, engineers. And so it's a challenge though, because again, I think a lot of people these days don't understand, they don't understand the mining industry. They don't necessarily want to go into STEM fields, not just in mining, but anywhere. I think that some of the changes that, and we have seen a little bit of, softening of attitudes about the mining industry as people have, understood how problematic it is to, again, be dependent on these foreign supply chains, but also, again, that we can produce things responsibly here. And so you do have people that I think, even a few years ago wouldn't have considered a career in mining, now will consider it because they do recognize, hey, this is a way for us to, help our country meet its, obligations to produce these minerals, or, you can be an environmentalist and work in the mining industry. You can be a social justice warrior and work in the mining industry, because there's actually, some great outcomes that come when we produce, the minerals that everybody relies on responsibly. So I think that there have, been some attitudinal shifts. One of the challenges we have, honestly, is that there's still some, environmental NGOs that definitely haven't had any shifts in their thinking about mining, or energy or anything else. And frankly, they have a lot of money and they have a lot of impact. And, it's hard to combat that sometimes. But, again, I feel much more optimistic about us being able to meet our workforce challenges now, because people are, I think, moving in the right direction and paying attention to these issues in a way that they just weren't even a few years ago.
What about BYU? They used to produce mining geologists. Do they not anymore?
To be honest, I haven't had as much interaction with BYU just because, we tend to focus on the publicly funded universities, but I do believe that they still have a geology program. Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
They
lost
Yeah.
their faculty that did that.
Yeah, and they did run a search, but the search failed. So they actually were trying to recruit kind of the next generation of, say, like economic geologists and things like that, but they weren't able to.
Yeah. But we need this industry to do a better job in working with BYU. It tends to be a little easier to work with the universities that are publicly funded because, they have to answer to the legislature. And that's really how we get a lot of things done here. But it's a well-taken point. They're obviously a massive university, and, we need to make sure that they're in the game as well. And even some of our other, UVU is another one where we haven't quite figured out how to work with UVU, but it's a huge university, and we need to, make sure that, that they're providing, even if they don't want to have a straight mining engineering program, that's okay. Just to reinforce their, their engineering offerings and things like that would be very beneficial. And to make sure that, again, if you're a chemical engineer, civil engineer, whatever, you understand that there's opportunities in the mining industry. And, if you're a civil engineer, you don't just have to go and, plan subdivisions or whatever. Like, you can do some really cool stuff in the mining industry that, I think for a civil engineer, for example, is a lot more exciting than planning subdivisions.
I guess I have one more question. Is there anything that we as a survey can do that we're not doing to help the work of the Mining Association and just generally mining in Utah?
Yeah, well, and I appreciate all the work that you guys do. Again, I rely a lot on, the data that you guys produce, especially for helping to educate policymakers and the general public. Obviously you guys work a lot with our member companies, especially our, mining and exploration companies to help provide them with, the services that they need. I think that, I think that getting you guys involved more with some of the efforts that I was talking about, like with STEM education and other things like that. I mean, I would love to have people from UGS at STEM Fest with us. In the past, we've had people from DOGM and from SITLA and from even FFSL have come to that, but we've never had UGS people there. And I think that, especially when you've got, most of the time we'll end up having somebody that's got, some geological knowledge that, because we always bring mineral samples and things like that. But it's different having, somebody that just has a little bit of geological knowledge versus somebody that has a lot that can, pick up one of those mineral samples or pick up that tube of toothpaste that we have out for the kids and explain, in a much more detailed way, why they should be excited about this stuff. So I think that's one thing. And, in the past, there have been some, Darlene and I have talked about this, some sort of, I don't know how to say this, sort of like expeditionary things that have happened with, projects that weren't particularly helpful to industry that sort of seemed like, I don't know where the impetus was coming from, for some of these research projects that, may have been very interesting on the science side, but weren't particularly useful for, advancing the mining industry in the state. And, I think some of those have, gone away with leadership change, but, if I have a study coming out that's basically like blaming the mining industry for some horrible thing happening and it's got the UGS logo on it, that's problematic for me. And again, I think that, I'm not as worried about that now as I, was with previous leadership, but that sounded really gauzy, but anyway, I think, figuring out how to provide the data and insights that are needed to attract mining investment here is, really what we rely on you guys to do. I need to be able to go out and tell people, hey, you need to come and invest in Utah because, yes, we have the policy environment and the investment environment, but also, we've got the minerals here and, they're developable and we've got all the great geological data that you can rely on. And, come to Utah and don't go to Idaho, don't go to, not that I have anything against Idaho, but I'd rather have the money come here, right? And so I think, just keeping that focus on, ultimately, the more you guys can help us attract mining investment here, and also too on the, on the policy side, we've had some good conversations about, policy issues that affect you guys directly, but, there were 1,100 bill files open in the last session. And again, we had 155 bills on our tracker, and not all of those guys, not all of those bills you guys are necessarily going to have an opinion about or, have any insight into, but a lot of them we will. And, I'd love to make sure that, we're getting feedback from, from the staff and from your board. If there's something in a bill that's problematic that, I need to go up there and try and fix, or we can even bring, you guys in to testify or to, to help with those lobbying efforts, that would be very beneficial. Because in many cases, a lot of these things, again, they're just kind of unintended consequences, or, on the proactive side, or if there's things where, there are resources or policies that need to be implemented that would help you guys do your job, or that, things you see in other states, or you really wish that we had in Utah, or whatever the case is, like, I'd love to figure out how to make those things happen so that, I want Utah to be the best place to mine. And so anything that's preventing us from, from getting there, I want to, clear those obstacles. So I need people that have that, in-depth knowledge like you guys do to help me do that. I know enough about a bunch of little things that I can, be dangerous up on the hill, but, when we get into a lot of these technical issues, I get way over my skis. So I need the advice and expertise of, folks that are in this room to make that happen.
So, yeah, we can do that. We were busy last legislative session, busier than I think we have been, with kind of pop-up bills that we weren't really aware of. And I think our staff really tried to be responsive to both legislators and, internally at DNR as well. Ben DeLynn, sitting at the end of the table, is wears many hats at UGS. He's our contracts analyst. He's also one of my key strategic advisors, but he is also our legislative liaison. And so we can, give you his phone number and hopefully, that works both ways as well. So we can talk during the legislative session.
That'd be great.
So, yeah. And then Mike just brought our hot off the press 2025 Utah mining report. So you can take that with you as well and distribute it to your membership, please.
One of our very small contributions that has been ongoing for almost 40 years. So we UGS started publishing an annual mining report. I think the first one was 1988 or somewhere around there. It's been done every year. There used to be two separate reports, a mining report and then a coal report. We have since combined those into just one big mining report. And this one is hot off the press. Just came out there. It's actually not even really published yet. It'll be probably published next week. And it is an overview of 2025 activities, but also a lot of our updates and descriptions of the exploration, includes stuff that's happening in 2026 as well. So we try to keep it timely. We communicate with all the different mining operators. We send out questionnaires. I send out questionnaires to the coal companies. I go and visit the coal companies. Steph and Andrew communicate with industrial mineral operations and with the metal operations. So we try our best to summarize everything that's going on in the mining world. So we hope it's useful to everybody, to you.
No, this is great, and I appreciate that. I mean, it's a pretty early publication date for you guys too.
We're trying to get it out. Well, we're trying to get it out as soon as we can.
Sure. We have to wait on annual reports a lot of times, and a lot of companies aren't putting their annual reports out until March or April, so sometimes that actually holds us back.
This is great. Yeah, there was a few years ago when it didn't come out until like October or something, and that kind of freaked me out. So
Not gonna lie, that was the year I had a baby.
Really good excuse.
Well, I'm glad it's something that you find informative
I use these all the
rely on. Yeah, great. Is it something your membership?
Yeah,
gets a
so
chance to see?
we do. We send this out to our membership. I use this, as a lot of times, especially with our federal delegation. Like people, they'll come and they're like, "Oh, I have all these questions." I'm like, "Okay, well, here, read this first, and then come back to me with questions." So between this and the critical minerals report, I mean, those are two that I send out to a lot of legislative staff and and other policymakers, and so. This is incredibly helpful. So
that's great.
Yeah, again, this and the critical mineral report are the two that I rely on probably the most, in the work that I do. Some of the specialized reports are amazing, but just get into maybe more detail than I need for my, high level.
Right. The 67-page critical minerals report. Yeah. Well, would you make sure that you let the legislature know about this and how important it is for your industry? As well, I think coming from a third party, that leads, one of the key industries in the state, I think that go over really well with them. We often don't get a lot of airplay for that kind of work that we do behind the scenes. It takes a lot of industry knowledge and communication and really personal relationships to collect a lot of this data. Mike is especially great at putting together, I think, some statistics and data around all of that. And so I'm glad to hear that it's an informative report and that you're sharing it so widely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I don't want to overstay my welcome, but one other thing that I'd love to, Andy and I were just talking about this a little earlier. One of the sort of potential conflict points that I do see coming up and that I think you guys will have to be involved with is, on in geothermal and like how do you regulate any potential mineral production out of geothermal operations. That's kind of an ongoing discussion in the legislature right now, and I think that having good data around what is potentially producible and other things from geothermal operations and how do we deal with that from a kind of regulatory and permitting perspective will be really important to have you guys in those conversations. I mean, you guys are having a little bit of a family feud inside of DNR about that. you know, between your Division of Water Rights and Dogum. And, you know, unfortunately, I got in the middle of that during the last session and got yelled at. And that was, but I mean, that is going to be an ongoing issue. You know, I mean, when you're getting into geothermal operations, when you're getting into, you know, deep brine resources and other things like that, where, you know, is this a geothermal operation? Is this a water production? Is this a mineral operation? I mean, all those things are going to get mixed up. And I think that, you know, your perspective on that and also being able to figure out, you know, where you can get into that discussion and where you have to stay out of it internally will be important. So,
Yeah, thank you. There's an internal DNR energy collaborating council that meets once a month, and those discussions do happen with that group. So know that we're engaging internally at DNR on that. But I do think that the geothermal development potential is happening pretty rapidly. I think you probably saw Rototherm's announcement, you know, what they're planning on doing. So thanks for the heads up on that.
and I think that there's ways to deal with all of that. I mean, I don't think that, you know, especially in today's world, that, you know, an operation needs to be just one thing. I mean, it doesn't just need to be
That's what I was
geothermal, or
thinking, right?
doesn't just need to be oil and gas.
It may be all of the above in
maybe all of
terms
the
of
above,
mineral and
right.
brines and
Well,
water.
and even produced water. I mean, you know, I think that with produced water, I mean, you know, the fact that a lot of my guys, the only way they can deal with the water is to, bless you, the only way they can deal with water is just to, you know, re-inject it back into the formations. I mean, you know, maybe that's good, maybe it's not, because I mean, we're in a drought situation, so maybe we can, you know, put that water to productive use, but then we run into a bunch of regulatory and, you know, rights issues that are problematic. So I think that we're gonna have to have some very hard discussions about this over the next few years, and I just wanna make sure that, you know, everybody has a seat at the table for those discussions, because, you know, we can't just say, oh, you know, this is how we did water in 1896, and so we're going to keep doing it this way. Well, you know, that's probably not going to work for the future when you have a lot of these operations. They're going to be everything. I mean, they're going to be, you know, energy operations and mineral operations and water operations and who knows what else. So, yeah, we've got to make sure that the regulations are keeping up with the reality.
Want to add anything about that, Mike?
Just part of our role in that is to do the analyses to see what is in that water, whether it's from geothermal and produced water. And so we've done a lot of that in the past. We also had 2 rather large DOE funded projects related to core CM, which is carbon ore and critical minerals. So it was, the phase 1 was focused on coal and coal adjacent strata, but phase 2, which is going to be starting here soon, in Colorado Plateau area, but also in the West Desert, is much more broadly defined. And part of that new definition is going to include produced water. We did a little bit of sampling of produced waters for Corsium phase 1, and that data is now out there, but we'll have an opportunity to do a lot more. And with now the West Desert as part of the area of interest, that'll include geothermal brines. Like I said, we have kind of a baseline of this data, but we'll have the funding here soon over the next year to do a lot more, and put out a lot more data.
That's maybe somewhere where interfacing can help, because a lot of times operators don't want us to come sample their water. So that's also part of it too, right? Like we could probably do a lot more, but, huh?
You mean the perception would be there can be nothing but, you know, problems between.
Yeah, well, that's it, because everything we do, we're gonna make public, right? So then that's, yeah. So maybe that's somewhere that we can all work together to make sure everyone's soothed and getting the good data that can help with, you know, policy and managing resources, but also not shuffling operators. So it's the same with mine waste, right? Like, you can't decide if they want us to come tell us there's things in it or not. You can't make them define.
I know John Baza, the previous director at Dogum, he was very interested in produced water, putting it to beneficial use, but in the end, the data that they had, and from my experience, almost all of it is the quality does not allow any, the highest beneficial use is putting it back in to keep the reservoir pressurized, or your Here, you know.
But then I would say this is where like the Mind Center might be one of these things where it can really help because there is all of these like leaps and bounds being made with that DLE technology. Well, and not just, so that's specific to lithium, but basically these ionic meshes that you put water through, and with the different size of the mesh, it can blow. Cat, I know I'm like, I'm saying things I don't know, but there's all sorts of advances in like the different ways that we can do extraction from water. So that's, you know, one of the areas that hopefully that metallurgical interfacing and chemical engineering can really maybe help with that. And I know it's like, it's also super variable produced water. It's like,
All over the place.
yeah, that I think we talked for a long time about trying to do a really big push on produced water studies, and then ultimately it was like they're captured differently. They like it was so
There's a lot being
variable.
used for frack water now and some drill water, but that's about as far as we've gone with it actually.
Which is an awesome benefit.
Yeah, it's
Because
huge
you're not
compared to using farmers' water. That's it.
I mean, to avoid taking drinking water and agricultural quality waters and putting them in the ground.
Yeah, so it is a big step up.
Huge step up.
I'm sure there's more. But one last thing is on the workforce services side. You know, so I do oil and gas, and where we've had a lot of success is we're in the schools pretty constantly. And the one thing is the schools I work with a lot, we don't get the mining industry in. We don't get you guys on theses or field trips or presentations. And it just takes a lot of little touches just to get the students aware that that's where it's at, to get them to take that emphasis and start going that to where that direction. And so, you know, we can interface and somehow get you guys into there. I think that would be good for everybody.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and we do have, you know, our mining ambassador program, but I mean, part of the challenge we have is that I mean, we're a lot more spread out than the oil and gas industry in the States. I mean, you know, we're in so many different parts of the state, and one of the things I think that oil and gas has done a little bit better than us is that, I mean, they've also gotten a lot of their service companies involved with that, whereas on the mining side, it's traditionally been the operators only that have really done that. And I don't know why that is, but that's something where we need
We'll have
to
80 service companies,
Yeah.
or say 80 different opportunities for touches where, of course, Kennecott's huge.
Yeah.
And if they don't have it, they might not get that touch.
Exactly. So yeah, we need to figure out a way to get our service companies as involved in the education touch points. But yeah, in some of the, you know, the rural parts of our state, that has been a little bit more challenging. It's just because, you know, again, you don't have that like huge concentration of activity like you do in the oil and gas industry, where it's, you know, vast majority of it's just right there in the basin. So one thing I did want to go back on the produced water side. I mean, one thing that's been a challenge for us, I mean, you know, a couple of years ago, they had a produced water bill that was run for oil and gas. And originally there was a companion bill on mining. We decided to hold on the mining side because there were some, you know, particular things for oil and gas that were, you know, it was just making it a little overly complicated to do both of them at the same time. But then, you know, the state water engineer kind of got buyer's remorse about the produced water bill, and so we were never able to run ours. And so, I mean, these are kind of things where, again, I mean, you've got different sort of regulatory, you know, something that's totally different on oil and gas than it is on the mining side, even though, I mean, ultimately it's the same principle, right? That what do you do with this water that you inevitably produce as a result of your, you know, your activities, your production activities. And so, yeah, these are the kind of things where, again, I think, you know, over the next few years, we're going to have some really hard conversations about how we deal with these type of things. And, you know, and I think to your point earlier, Rich, I think that, you know, as technology develops and, you know, what Stephanie was talking about, you know, there's going to be more and more uses. There's going to be more minerals that you can extract. There's going to be, you know, you can clean up the water better. You can find, you know, new ways to recycle. But I mean, even water reuse is really controversial. And so, I mean, like, these are a lot of conversations that we're going to have over the next few years. And, you know, we're going to need to make sure that all the experts are at the table for that, because, you know, that hasn't been the case. You know, with a lot of these bills that have been run over the past few legislative sessions, I mean, they've been very narrowly focused to kind of provide a, you know, either fix a problem or provide a benefit for a very sort of narrow sector of, you know, the geothermal industry or whatever the case is. And, you know, we're not dealing with some of these bigger issues, and, you know, we've got to deal with them. And also, like, I don't want to get yelled at by Mike McKilligan. So, anyway.
And then that goes back to like this cross-disciplinary approach to workforce development, because if more of whatever field you're looking at is aware and has had a little bit of training in other fields around them, it's easier to look for these crossover and improvement opportunities. So.
I hope that was productive
No,
for you,
it's
and
good.
also for us, so thank you so much for taking the time to come to get to know our board a little bit more. They're a huge asset for us, and to talk with us about how we can continue to support the mining industry and, you know, the value of our data, hopefully. So, and we have a big team here that's doing a lot on the mining side, so just keep going on all that.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for what you do. And yeah, if there's anything where we can be helpful and, you know, we love to partner with our state partners and our, just here to make things work as well as they can. So, yeah, thank you.
You missed the very introductory part of our meeting. We did introduce, in addition to our mineral staff, we have quite a bit of outside funding that has come in through staff and her team for minerals exploration work. And there's even a couple of other larger projects out there. I think you're aware of the BHP Explore program that Steph's been part of. So we did add another minerals geologist to our team. So we're doing the good work over here.
That's great. So can I ask, is that funding mostly coming from industry or is that?
Yeah,
you know,
do you want me to
from-
run through it? Well, I don't have any slides, but I can run through also for the board. If anyone has heard of, I think it's in this survey note. Does anyone know? We ran an article about BHP Explorer and I think it's in the survey.
It's in the survey notes that's coming out next month.
Okay, yeah, so there will be an article about this in survey notes, but, so my project geologist, Jim McVeigh, and I were in this program called BHP Explore. So BHP is the largest mining company in the world. They have what's called an accelerator program that's traditionally targeted at junior mining companies to take essentially a good idea and make it investable. And just out of a moonshot, I actually applied for us, and it just lo and behold, we got in. And so we're the first government entity, academic entity, anything other than essentially a junior mining company. We're the first ones in. And so the way that we've structured this is focusing on our actual foundational data infrastructure. So all the data that you need to then take and do your job, our focus is on trying to build those foundations for Utah. So we've got a couple different themes that are very like our nitty gritty geology, like intrusive base maps and fertility and architecture mapping. So we have, you know, it's our kind of stuff, but that allows us to build the data foundations that we need to then create the products that can inform just a basic prospectivity map for the state and things like that. So it's a $500,000 grant. We're wrapping up the formal part
What's
of
your
our,
deliverable on it? Like what?
yeah, so we have, they are the nerdy geology deliverables. So we're doing a regional intrusive sampling campaign where we're running lithogeochemistry, geochronology, trace element geochemistry on zircons and samarium neodymium isotopes. So that helps with cratonic isotopic mapping, age and fertility assessments across the state. So that the whole point of doing that, if we take all the dirty, like nerdy geology speak, what we're trying to do is area reduction for exploration. So we don't, if an exploration company is coming in, we don't want them to have to figure out where in the whole state they want to pick up ground. We want them to know like this 20% of the state is the most prospective for the system that you're looking for. But then we need a lot of the nerdy geology to do those assessments. So our focus is on de-risking exploration, attracting investment and reducing the exploration area in the state. And when we also reduce the exploration area, we can start to integrate above ground risk as well. So we can start taking out areas that are overly sensitive for environmental reasons or for water reasons. So that allows us to also promote the responsible stewardship of environmental resource development. So our deliverables are things like an architecture with the spheric map and this regional fertility study and a prospectivity map and a preservation potential. So those are kind of the deliverables that we're doing. Everything we're doing will be made public. There's a 1-year window of confidentiality. That is the benefit that BHP is getting out of it. But overall, I would say we're getting a lot out of it. So yeah, the formal part of the program, Jim and I are closing that out actually in just a month, but our project will actually run through July of next year. So
That was a $500,000 grant. No match.
Yeah, but it will let us do, you know, traditionally we've kind of been able to do a lot of postage stamp work and trying to get little areas. This is letting us do much larger statewide assessments and compilations so that we can build essentially better products to attract exploration and investment into the state. So.
Do you have a feel why BHP selected the Utah Geological Survey? I mean, is it because of the resources in the survey or the prospective terrains, geologic terrains in Utah for ore bodies, or both?
Yeah, I think it was multi-pronged. I think there was kind of a lot of curiosity about how this type of public-private partnership could actually work. I mean, I do think BHP works very hard to be a good community member within the mining industry. So there was that aspect, kind of the innovative aspect to it. There is recognition of the skills and the depth of knowledge, and both me and my team, like we deliver at a pretty high level, and I think we're known to deliver at a pretty high level. So I will say there was certainly some reputational support that went into that, but then also, yeah, geologic terrain. And we are kind of only working on the western half of the state right now, but the kind of the skills that we're learning, because we're getting a lot of upskilling as well, as far as like how they look at a mineral system from, you know, mantle to deposit scale and things like that, and what kind of data we need to collect and how we integrate all that. So we're getting a lot of value out of it, and we'll be able to take that to the rest of the state with different types of mineral systems. So right now it's very porphyry copper focused, but yeah, pulling stuff out into other systems as we're able. Ultimately, we are still government, so we do still not work as fast as industry, but we're getting skills.
Do you want to talk about SEG maybe while Brian's here too?
Yeah, I know.
One last thing.
Richard, I'm looking at who might actually be going to SEG. SEG, Rich?
Probably, yeah.
Yay! Okay, so SEG is the Society of Economic Geologists. This is an international organization that's very technically focused. There's SME that tends to work more on the downstream, has all your engineers, has things like that. This is more upstream, and it is very geoscience centric. So the international annual meeting is being held here in Salt Lake. I do have the privilege of being chair of this conference. So yeah, we've got a lot of UGS impact going on. Darlene is going to come give some opening comments for us when we open the whole thing. It'll be at the Salt Palace Center from September 30th to October 3rd. Mike's going to run a field trip whether he wants to or not. I put it on his calendar about a year ago, so he couldn't tell me.
How many people are expected to come?
We are currently trending above registration numbers from last year, which was the record-setting year of attendance. So I always felt like if we hit 1,000, we'd be doing great. But right now, they had 1,200 last year, and right now our registration numbers are trending above them. So we will see. We have some really cool, innovative things. We actually sold out our core shack, which SEG has, one, never had a core shack, and two, never managed to sell it out. So we've sold out our core shack. We've sold out our exhibits. We've sold out our field trips. We've sold out our short courses. Yeah, we're doing a rock auction. If anybody has some good geological samples that they wouldn't mind donating, we are running a rock auction for a scholarship fundraiser. So if you have any nice samples,
What are you looking for?
just things that are nice, high quality rock and mineral stuff, something that someone would want to bid on in a silent auction, just that type of thing. So yeah, it should be a really good time.
Have you put out anything to our members about that?
What's that?
Rock samples.
Oh, no, I've been trying to tell everyone that I possibly could. I can send you our little graphic.
Yeah,
That,
send it.
flyer.
yeah, that
We'll
was
send it with our newsletter.
Oh, that
And
was
those are donations, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you can
that's
they can just come to us. Like we'll manage getting them to us.
That's a great idea. And
Yeah.
that money raises scholarship.
Yep, scholarships, so research grants and conference attendance. Those are the two.
That's a great idea. Yeah, and Steph's the chair of this, so it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it should be really fun. It's very upstream, but also for me, my argument is always, well, the downstream doesn't exist without the upstream. The upstream tends to be a little smaller because it's a little more focused, a little more technical. We don't have as many like service providers. But again, if we don't do our job well, there's nothing that comes after us. So.
It's great to have in Utah. So that gives Utah's, exploration.
A lot of them are exhibiting. AmWest is exhibiting, BCM is exhibiting. I almost got Hawk Resources, but I think they missed out and we sold out. Tinnick is exhibiting, Rio's exhibiting. Like they're all, they're all, even the little ones, they're all showing up. Liberty's exhibiting. Yeah. Survival's exhibiting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, send me the graphic. I'll put it out with our newsletter.
Thank you.
I'd love to see if we can get some samples for that, and then if there's anything else that we can do to support that from the industry side, I'd love to help with that. So
Sure.
Great.
I assume you're working with the U a bunch on that too.
Not as much because we don't have an economic geologist. I think Lauren Bergenhauer is going to come. I think she's sending a couple students, but one thing so actually, y'all, going back to this workforce conversation, I worked my tail off to get SCG to provide travel support for undergrads specifically, because SCG, this is one of my things with SCG, they traditionally focus very heavily at the graduate level, and that is too late. We've already missed a huge part of the workforce pipeline if we're focusing at the graduate level. So I worked super hard to get undergraduates travel support this year. We sent it out to all the universities. We, like in the US, Arizona, California, all of our Utah universities, just everyone. We got 6 applications from the US.
Oof.
So when we say this workforce problem is hard, and like we're trying, like, so, and so then that's gonna, I think everyone liked the idea enough that it will still have traction to go forward. I think they're gonna take the program that I built and use it in future conferences, and obviously there's been some lessons learned. But yeah, the workforce component is hard, and we're trying, but it is a challenge. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming to visit us. It's really nice to see you here. And I appreciate your time and your preparation for this. So we'll just keep the conversation going. I know when I put Brian and, Brian and staff got together for lunch, and I really just got out of the conversation and took notes. I have a lot to talk about. It's very engaged. So I really appreciate that. So thanks for all you're doing.
Well, thank you guys. And this one thing too, again, if there's anything that we can do as industry to help, and I know it's only August, so it seems crazy to be talking about the legislative session, but it'll be here before we know it. So yeah, I'd love to have some conversations, and if we can be helpful as you guys are putting your requests for, for budgets, and if end up with any RFAs or anything like that. We ask for a lot from the legislature, but we don't tend to ask for a lot of money. And so, if we can support things like that, especially appropriations requests, like that does tend to have an impact, because again, we're just not in there, begging for money every year like most people. So we'd love to do that. We want to make sure you guys have the resources you need, both, for your normal operations, but also for these kind of projects that you're taking on. I would love to see, maybe there could be a state match for, that BHP project, and just let you, expand that. And anyway, yeah, I would love to be helpful wherever we can on the legislative side. So.
We should have talked a week ago. Our building block request yesterday. We'll get you next time.
No, that's fine. Well, the problem is that in submitting your building block request, it's getting,
Getting it into the governor's budget, but that's okay. We got a little leverage, I think.
Well, we should recognize the RFA that we got a couple years ago on critical minerals, the 400,000, which I'm sure you helped with, and we appreciate. We love RFAs because they're a little bit easier for us.
Yeah.
Line waste inventory actually had a little bit of seed funding from USGS, but we used the RFA as part of this high priority mineral asset. That was part of that went into the.
Yeah, let's follow up and send that to Brian also.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. There's actually several things I should make sure that you know.
So great enough.
Yeah, I'd love to help with that. Again, RFAs and things like that. But if you guys are finding problems with your, budget stuff, please let me know. We can't always impact that, but we don't have a lot of success impacting what goes into the governor's budget, but we have more success if there, are things that maybe got missed in the governor's budget, and you guys can't talk about them anymore, but governor can't fire me, so I can still talk about it.
I like that. Our legislative finance analyst, Lacey, is here too. So she's probably listening here. So we will continue that conversation. That's a great offer. And thank you very much. That is someplace. Those are, 2 different tracks where you could really help us out a lot.
And you were joking that it's August, it's too early to think about the legislative session. I'm already thinking about the next legislative session. And I think, there's some work about road mapping, what a strategic plan for mineral resources in Utah looks like, and kind of dovetailing how geologic research works with the Mine Center, works with all the other initiatives. And I think if we work on that, we're very lucky to be well funded at the moment. We've had a lot of luck with outside grants, with no match outside grants, which are not that kind. And, we are still working out the ends of the RFA, but I think in the next following session, I think we could maybe put forward some really bold ideas about how to truly move the needle on what's needed to attract investment to the state and do some big ideas.
And I think one more area is Earth MRI is up for review at the federal level. It's a really important program for Utah. I think we're in a good place with fMRI, but for many other states, it is a crucial piece of collecting, information over wider areas. It really helps, kind of zero in on relevant areas for exploration and that kind of de-risking piece of it. So you'll hear about that, and you can help advocate for that federal level. That's really important.
Yeah, I mean, have you guys talked to Congressman Malloy's office about that?
I spoke with Malloy's office last week, the One Utah Summit. They had a couple of coordinators there. We ran through the last 5 years of Earth MRI projects for UGS and what we used them for. So I think they understood the significance that we see in the program.
Well, yeah, I'd love to coordinate on that because we do a lot of work. I mean, she's on interior appropriations, and so I mean, she probably has the best, the best opportunity to affect that. And she's obviously, she's the daughter of a miner, so I mean, she gets the importance of this industry and everything you need to support it. So I think you could have some really good inroads there. And again, we'd love to help, just sort of second whatever you pitch to them, whatever you pitch to her office. Again, we do a lot of work with all our delegation offices. So if there's things where we can be helpful there as well, if there's, federal issues that, we can just, give an amen to as you guys are advocating there, or if you need potential doors open, we're happy to help with that.
Be excellent. I'm looking forward to talking. I think we'll have a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, Mike's going to be in DC at the end of next month. The American Association of State Geologists has twice yearly legislative liaison, outing. And so Mike's going to be out there actually for the Earth MRI workshop. It overlaps with AASG's legislative liaison. So we're going to hit up all of our congressional representatives. So, maybe a letter of support or something somewhere along the way from your association would be great.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Thank
For the
you.
board, that when we talk about Earth MRI, there's funding that comes directly to UGS, which I think would be in excess of 1 million. Generally no match funding. So we've brought in a lot of direct funding, but also Earth MRI has led federal data acquisitions over the state, exceeding $10 million worth of new data as far as geophysics, LiDAR, hyperspectral. I know I'm forgetting one other one. I can't remember what the other one is. There's actually a new AeroMag and AeroRad survey that was just released over Southwest Utah. We'd like to go look at that. It's called the Iron Axis Survey. So
It's a great program.
it's not just about the money that comes into UGS specifically. It is about money and data over Utah as a whole.
I would say the only small downside to Earth MRI is it's very metals focused, vertical minerals focused. And talking with Andrew Ruppke, we're seeing the need to look at more industrial minerals, and there's not a good source of funding to study industrial minerals. And so Andrew and I have been talking about that and trying to figure out ways for maybe the state to get more involved in funding industrial minerals, whether it's aggregate, pozzolans, potash.
Have you, has there been any discussion with USGS about, sort of shifting some of these things to be more critical mineral focused versus just kind of hard rock? I mean, because obviously
Well, right now,
aggregate and other things aren't on there, but potash and some of the other industrial minerals are.
you could do potash.
Yeah.
research. Yeah, so it is explicit to critical minerals, and everything that is critical minerals. It's not limited to hard rock resources. And Andrew's done several studies on phosphate.
Yeah.
I think that was the major. That was
Phosphate, potash,
fluorine, potash. Yeah.
But yeah, we're thinking more about aggregates, pozzolan, things that fall outside the realm of Earth MRI that we're having more trouble finding.
Yeah, and their mineral resources program from the USGS, like Sarah Riker, she was starting to make noise in that direction 2 years ago, but then I think it's just that, things went crazy. So I don't know where that would have been.
We'll be having those conversations with USGS about pushing Earth MRI more into industrial minerals, but we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and the aggregate stuff is a little tricky on the state side, just because, they're obviously, I don't have any aggregate members. Because they're regulated a little bit differently, they haven't traditionally been part of the mining association. They have kind of their own coalition. I don't have any of the aggregate producers. And one of the challenges we have, honestly, is that I mean, politically, like the aggregate producers kind of try and do things for themselves, and then mining gets, traditional mining gets sucked into it, and sometimes that's fine, and other times we have to kind of like, say, hey, you guys do your thing over here, and we're gonna do our thing over here. So, I mean, that's another thing. I think over the next few years, we'll probably have to have those conversations as to whether aggregate needs to be, brought in under kind of full state control. But I mean, right now they kind of like their weird little, we have some state stuff and some local stuff, and I don't know. I don't know if that's sustainable long term, but we're gonna have another fight this year about one. Actually, I don't know if you guys heard about that, the whole Daniels Canyon thing that's happening. Like there's gonna be a bill run on that basically goes back and looks at that geological trend language that we have. Because I mean, that's how they're justifying that mine. And I mean, it's incredibly controversial, and not just, in that community, but I mean, frankly, in the industry, because I've had conversations with my counterparts on the aggregate side, and I mean, they don't like it either. But we've got to make sure that we figure out the right language to say, okay, how do we, preserve the intent of this, which is that, you can follow those geological trends if you're, chasing a gold vein or whatever the case is. But this doesn't mean that if you, have a mine in Genola, that you can then have a mine, in Heber, because it's the same geological trend. It's like, yeah, I don't know that was really the intent of that statute when it was, created however many years ago that it was created. So, but we also want to make sure that it's, you guys are helping to advise on that, and we, preserve as much of the functionality of that as we can, but also don't allow someone to say, hey, limestone is limestone, so I can open one wherever I want.
Right.
So,
I appreciate hearing your sensibility about that and offer to kind of collaborate on tweaking that so that it is appropriate for your industry as well. So.
And this, again, something where we kind of get dragged into it, and we don't want to see, that benefit for our industry go away. But, it's clearly, I think this is something that most people can agree is an abuse of that statute. And so we need to figure out how to bring that in without, without taking away a benefit for people that want to use it in the way it's intended to be used. So
maybe that's something we can get ahead of prior to legislative session.
We're trying. We actually have we're going to be putting a meeting together with well, we don't know exactly who the bill sponsor is going to be at this point. So, but once we figure that out, we'll get everybody together and we can talk through it. So,
yeah, we're happy to contribute to that. We did just have something kind of pass through our office around that. So we've got thoughts and can contribute to that. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you guys.
Return Brian Luce. Thank you so much for your time today. It's really great to have you here. Really appreciate you making time.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Why don't we take a break again and I'll get our the rest of our board meeting teed up. We're gonna do financials next. So we've got finance manager.
This is a way
Okay, so we're back on the record, everyone. So at this point, in our agenda, we'll move to our next item, which is a financial update. So, we close our year end at the end of June and begin our next fiscal year. This is the time when our relatively new finance manager, Nguyen Seymour, who's wasn't previously with the state, got to run through her first closeout, looking back at our annual, at everything over the year. And she's run a great report for you guys about where we stand at the end of this fiscal year and how that tees us up for success for fiscal year 27. I just want to really hand a huge compliment to Nguyen. She's been a terrific asset for us. She was an amazing interview, and I think we're lucky to have her in UGS. She's been a great asset to me and to our leadership team as is. Ben DeLand is going to follow up with that with kind of a look on the contracts and sort of how we get our revenue and manage that side. But I'm going to turn it over to Nguyen, who's got a great story to tell you. And here, let me get some of my
Perfect.
out of.
So if you all recall back in April, so just in terms of agenda, I'm gonna walk through just a refresher on the funding architecture so everybody have a sense of our funding source, and then we'll go over the expenditures, our 5-year trend. We go over our carry forward and then our FY27 outlook. So if you was here in April, we kind of tell a story of where our money come from for UGS. We have general fund, which is 50% of our funding, and then we have restricted account. These are the money that come from the federal lease, the my occupation tax, and our interest income from that. And then we also have a small component of land exchange distribution account that contributes to our restricted account. And then the outside funding, these are the great work that the federal grant that you saw we talk about, the private entity come in and give us the funding to do our work. So on the restricted account, obviously the risk that we're always monitoring within UGS matching up with the appropriation that was given to us. So this is something that we constantly are monitoring. The outside funding, we every year get a appropriation, which is a max authority that we can go out and collect based on the forecast or the work that our program manager put together. But the actual earning and collections is based on the delivery that we are able to accomplish for the years. So that very much dependent on the capacity, the bandwidth that staff have to be able to deliver. So this year's FY26, as Darlene mentions, our fiscal year started July 1st, 2025, and it ended June 30th, 2026. So FY26, where we landed in terms of the funding source, we have 8.9 million from general. That captures our general fund one-time, as well our building block, the geothermal that you all heard of, that run multiple years. And then the restricted account, we have 3.29 million in restricted account, and then outside funding, which is 5.51, represent 31% of our funding source. I'm gonna pause for a minute here because that 5.51 represent the 2.53 transfer, which is the work that we do in collaboration with our brother or sister agency, and then the federal grant, 2.26 million. Those two numbers are the highest realization rate ever in UGS history. So a moment of celebration here. With the general restricted and outside funding, that bring our total available funding to 17.74 million. And then how we spend that money, we're gonna show you our expenditures over the last 5 years so that you can see the trend. So out here, over the last 5 years, you will see that our financial footprint has expanded from 9.49 million to 15.24 million. Personnel is our core asset, people are our core asset. This year's in FY26, that blue component, as you can see, represents 73% of our expenditures. And if you look at the expenditures for personnel, you'll see that over the past 5 years, we have every year, year over year, keep growing. But in FY26, we intentionally kind of put a pause and take a look at our workforce as a whole and kind of assess whether we have the bandwidth or the funding to keep growing and what the work mix should look like. So as you can see, that component did not grow from 2025 to 2026. And actually in the next slide, you'll see that we kind of take a little dip when it comes to personnel. And that was an intentional decision that we make. And now as we assess the workload, the amount of grant work that we receive, and we see that there is enough work, we then make the decision to hire. And as you see those new personnel that we just saw at the beginning of the meeting. The second thing that will jump out in here, you'll see is the pass-through amount. Because of the complexity of the work, the grant that was written requires to partner with other entity. I think Mize is gone, but he could speak to certain project that requires to partner with other entity, and that's why that number increased compared with previous years. So in summary, the expenditures, the primary driver for us for this year's is a building block funding that we've got for geothermal that run multiple years, as well as our record captures in federal fund and the work that we perform in collaborations with our sister and brother agency.
And when, before you change the slide, I want to point something out, especially because Lacey is here. She's our legislative finance officer. I want to point out that all of this growth in funding has happened without asking the legislature for an adjustment to our general fund, right? So the staffing growth that we've had, the way we deploy our general funds to, secure match funding for grants, the hiring that we've done, this growth is related to transfer funds with other agencies, with external funding, and with building blocks, so specific, line item type things. So just keep that in mind as we talk about our overall staff numbers.
Yeah, I might just step back and I just mentioned that the work for certain programs require us, as we prepare the grant, to collaborate with other outside entity to deliver that. And Mike can speak to some of that. I think UBML is one other example that you could tell the board the work that we partner with other entity to deliver.
Yeah, that project is our bathymetric LiDAR project out of Great Salt Lake. And we had initially put in a building block. The legislature decided to take the funds from Forest Fire State Lands restricted account, which is fine with us. And so it's a partnership between us, Forest Fire State Lands, to collect bathymetric LiDAR data out of Great Salt Lake, which is similar to Topo, but it laser penetrates the water column and gives you a high resolution rendering of the floor of the lake and gives us better elevation models.
That was about $1 million.
$1.8 million. The data collection is about 1.6 and carved out about 200K per set.
Darlene, would it be fair that, from 2022 to now, but the growth has been.
So some of that growth was driven by, bumping up staff to manage data preservation grant, I think is probably a big one. Where else did we grow?
The water program, we had a lot of growth.
We had a lot of
Seems like
growth in our
critical
groundwater
minerals,
wetlands program. Yeah, we've grown that groundwater wetlands work a lot and staff a lot. And again, that's because that is what's being asked from us, from our state partners, right? Forestry, fire, and state lands, right? Is the attention to water deficits in Utah and the Great Salt Lake have become more and more kind of a prevalent, driver and need for our work. We have grown our energy and minerals team as well. But again, when I came on,
It grows for the CCUS and then the hydrothermal programs, as well as the critical minerals. So stuff that the legislature is asking you to do anyway.
Yes, right. And yes, it is, right. And there's a lot of external funding for that, right? So it's partly like, what is the state asking us to do? Where are there funding opportunities externally, especially from DOE and DOI, that'll help us get that work done? So we're bringing in, federal money to help achieve that, as well as being responsive to forestry, fire, and state lands, to the Division of Water Rights, as they've asked us to do basin, groundwater basin water balances across the state for communities that are experiencing water stress. Trying to help SITLA, right, with mapping on lands that have potential, lease opportunities. So when I came on, I looked at our staffing numbers and our mission focus, and really just tried to align our staffing with what our mission needs to be, right? So we had some attrition in 2024 and 2025. I kind of let that attrition happen. We just held our staffing, called it measure and monitor mode, right? Where are we at with our staffing? And I'm still looking at rebalancing our staffing portfolio a little bit. I think there's some opportunities to do that. So you'll see a few changes. We brought on, to be able to bring on 4 scientists, I think says a lot about how healthy our budget is. And again, that was done with a lot of thought, with a lot of number crunching, and making sure that we can support that down the road. Mike?
Part of that increase in personnel costs from 2022 to 24 were pretty massive targeted salary increases for geologists. 2 years in a row, the legislature did studies looking at comparability of what we get paid versus private industry, and there were 10% raises, 20% raises. There were significant raises to level up our salaries compared to outside. So a lot of that is, we're not adding people, but people are getting paid better.
They're getting paid more. Yeah, that was like a
point.
step change in our staff cost of somewhere, it depends on the position and the person, but up to like 30% really over those couple of years.
This timescale, I believe, represents growth from about 80 to 95 employees. So we did add bodies as well.
Yeah.
We did for sure, but there's a not trivial component of changes in wages that they occurred as 2 different step changes.
And we're trying to be really careful about that right now. There's a big affordability question happening. We're trying to help people out. We're looking at opportunities to promote staff. But again, you can't just give everybody a 10% raise when your personnel costs are, $12 million, right?
I do want to echo what both Mike and Stefan brought in, because if you see the headcount growth, the number didn't change so much drastically from 2022 to 2026, because it's 62 and 62, right, at the B level, Schedule B, and then everything else kind of constant, but that jump that you saw from the previous slide was pretty significant, and that kind of
Be your geoscientist.
right, the increase in.
Yeah, so TLs.
Be our career science positions or career support staff positions as the core of the survey.
So TLs are, the 2 guys that were in here, we hire those. We carry our TL, we carry some of our TLs around for a long time. And I think we probably want to be a little more thoughtful about some of that. That's what I'm looking at right now. But they are, usually that's the level that we'll hire at when we have, a large grant opportunity that's come in, that might take a couple years to map out, so.
Yeah, and one thing that you probably don't know, I want to give you kudos to Stefan and Darlene, because every time when somebody brings in any project proposal, the first question that they would ask is this missions focus? And I think that helped out a lot with, because I feel like here, everybody want to do great work and they always have great idea of what kind of project they want to work on. Unfortunately, we don't have the money to do it all because we have constraint, and Darlene and Stefan has been great with kind of narrowing people down. So on this slide, just want to bring, kind of echo what we discussed in the previous slide, is that number one, personnel is our highest component of total spend, and that is pretty much aligned with the industry of the service that we provide. We are, heavy in personnel, and then the cost in terms of personnel service for 2026, as you can see, we kind of hold steady, even bring it down a little bit compared to the previous years, and then that would allow us to assess for FY27. Moving on, so as we discussed, our total available funding was at 17.74 million from those three sources of funding. Our expenditures for FY26 ended at 15.24 million, that leaving us with a balance of 2.5 million. Of that 2.5 million, we talked earlier on about those programs that carry multiple years. So you talk about the Bonneville Salt Flat, the critical mineral RFA, and then the geothermal building block. Those three programs have multiple years, and so the carry forward that belong to those three programs is 1.31 million, and then the non-program component of that 2.5 is 1.18 million. So that is our carry forward allocation for FY27. At the end of FY27, we do want to have a balanced goal for the non-program in the same range between 1 to 1.2 million. I will dive into that, the rationale why we're thinking that is a healthy number in the next slide. Anything you will add to that before we moving on? Any questions from the room? Okay. So we did touch on the restricted account at the beginning of our conversations, is that we have a restricted account that we really can't control. We was given an appropriation, but the revenue collected from the restricted accounts kind of go up and down month over month. So for FY26, we started the beginning balance at 1 million our restricted account. Total, we was able to collect it in the restricted account for FY26 at 2.68 million. And then the appropriations that was given to us to withdraw 3.27, which we do that in every quarter. We'll take out 811K. And so that leaving us at the end of FY26 with a balance of 417K, which is what we will then start for FY27 as the beginning balance. We touch on that 1.184,005 million that we started as a non-program carry forward. We put in some scenario to kind of help us plan for FY27. What if we collected the same amount? What if we collect 10% more or less than 10%? What would happen? And then Mike also did his calculation, his forecast to help us figure out of those three scenarios where we most likely will land in terms of the revenue collection itself. So Mike seems to think that we will most likely in these two scenarios where our base will be about 2.78 million plus or minus 200K. So with those two scenarios, we're kind of looking at a deficit if we continue drawing at the 3.327,100, that was given in terms of appropriations. So that 1.18 million that you see we carry forward will net between 958K to 1.1 million just from that account.
So this is complicated, so I'm gonna try to go through it again, because I do this really so I can understand it as well. Our appropriation is 3.27 million out of our restricted account. So whether this much money comes in or not, 811K a quarter gets pushed into our account. So if only 2.684 comes in through those mineral lease and severance funds, there's a deficit. And we have to pay that back at the end of the year. So we have to have enough carryover to, adjust this balance, right? Or we request a change in our appropriation. And since Lacey's here, I'll just say we're watching this. And so we're not going to make a request right now, but by December, maybe we may have a better idea of where we stand. Mike has this kind of very complicated method for tracking what is really happening in industry that drives this on the revenue side. And so he's able to give us kind of he gets his Ouija board out and his crystal ball and shakes them all up together and gives us kind of a ballpark figure of where he thinks that mineral lease is going to come in, or the restricted account is going to come in for the year. We try to budget to this, not to that, because if we budget to that, we may be over by about $500,000, and that's a lot in our little budget, right? So, so we either plan on having enough money to, have additional carryover, right? Ideally, we'd like to be using our restricted account to keep money in reserve. That's the goal. But there's been an offset with industry since our appropriation was set about what revenue actually comes in.
Maybe just a little bit more background, especially for newer board members. Utah Geological Survey has gotten federal mineral lease royalties for a very long time, which is great. We get a certain percentage, but it complicates our budgeting because that number is so uncertain, because it's based off of commodity values, and what really drives it is oil and gas and the price of oil and gas. So we try to calculate or predict oil and gas production on federal lands and the price of oil and gas to try to determine how much money we're going to get each year, to varying degrees of success. Then a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, we started to receive additional money into our restricted account from state severance tax. So that comes from oil and gas, but it also comes from mining. So it's a little bit more diversified pot of money. So it's from mineral commodities produced anywhere in Utah, whereas the mineral lease is only mineral commodities produced on federal land. So like, think of Kennecott. We never got any mineral lease money from Kennecott because Kennecott is private land. But now we get some money from Kennecott because they pay mineral severance tax. So now we have 2 unpredictable amounts that we try to have to forecast. The severance tax is also based on the value of the production. Luckily, the formula for how much money we get in severance tax is based on more historic events. So we can use historic data and then use that to calculate mineral lease or severance tax for, say, this year. Mineral lease is more of a real-time thing to predict. So that's where this 2.68 million comes from. There's those 2 pots of money coming into this account from those two sources. And again, we try to predict what that's going to be for the entire fiscal year 27. We get mineral lease checks monthly, so every month, once we get a check, I redo all my numbers, update them as needed.
Which is this number that Mike talked about. So every month, Mike would do his calculation. He'll send it back to him. He'll say, it's gonna be this instead of that.
So just last week, I tried to calculate what we're gonna get for fiscal year 27 and landed on that down at the bottom, that 2.78 million from both severance and mineral lease.
So instead of 2.6, because this is right now, we just take, okay, what if it's this year's the way it is, this year 10%, and this is what Mike mentioning that it possibly be in FY 27, 2.78 plus or minus 200K.
So that's basically at break even for our restricted account. So in terms, but remember, we started with a little bit in our account. So there is an opportunity when we get to like, maybe December, if we do feel like our budget is pretty healthy and have a healthy carryover, maybe we want to adjust that appropriation downwards for the year so that we can retain some money in our restricted account and actually start, using it to have a little bit more cushion. Any carryover is a great cushion for us. It gives us resilience. There's still a lot of uncertainty out there with federal government and all that kind of stuff. So we definitely want to have that cushion. Again, we're being really careful about staffing and the rest of our expenses. So we're just kind of in measure and monitor mode. But this picture that Nguyen has built really helps us understand where we sit and where we're going. So it's great guidance for us.
Anything else you want to add, Mike?
Just say again, going back to the unpredictability, having a restricted account removes some of the uncertainty and within plugging that money into our budget, because now we can take money from year to year, whereas in the past, the mineral lease, we had to spend it that year, and if I predicted 1.5, but then we get 3 million, then it gets swept, or we, at the end of the year, we're like, how can we spend $500,000 fast? Now we don't necessarily have that problem because we have a mechanism to carry that forward, but we're still kind of caught in the unpredictability that in, say, 2015, price of oil and gas crashed kind of unexpectedly and wiped out $2 million from mineral lease that we thought we were going to get. All of a sudden, a couple months later, we're not getting $2 million for a UGS budget at the time, which was like 10 million, losing $2 million overnight. And our staffing takes up 90% of our budget. That's a huge deal. So that's why that illustrates the importance of having that carry forward in the cushion.
And paying attention and doing good budgeting and being good finance.
And that kind of leading into was just the same thing for the following year, that we need to have a healthy carry forward or do something with our budget. Because FY 26 we had a balance to be with. FY 27 we had a beginning balance to be with. FY 28 we're not sure whether there'll be a beginning balance in the restricted account. So then we'll have to be extra cautious. Not to be worried. This is not to be alarming. We are starting to go and do our operating budget next week with our staff, and that will inform us what would it take to run the UGS FY 27. Also, it's very assuring for me because a lot of our managers not only plan out for their staff with the workload and the grant for FY 27, many of the managers had planned out 2 or 3 years. I mean, just staff mail just informing they see no 2 years out for her staff. If you talk to groundwater, a lot of the manager know, and they have grant or upcoming work for 3 years. So now after this, my work is to go and gather all that data together to help us then plan ahead FY 27 and FY 28. Okay. And then yesterday during staff meeting, I mentioned to staff that here's a kind of a life cycle of the outside funding so that everybody knows that even though there's a lot of opportunity that people see when they do the grant proposal, at the end of the day, it's all about deliver, get it and on time, on budget, so that we can actually collect the outside funding as we plan. So staff is aware of that. We also show them that here are kind of the broader, like scope of the grant accurately. Check the remaining budget regularly and making sure that there's still budget, and then don't charge to a program or project that doesn't have any funding. Work with their managers to scope it right, and that would also help with our budget. So we do everything we can internally to kind of making sure that we proactively plan for and then managing our budget. As you see, we do a lot of great work here, and there's just not enough funding to do everything that we wanted to do. And our staff are incredibly intelligent and smart, and they have lots of great ideas. So Ben will then walk you through the next component about the program and project.
So for a lot of our staff, this financial picture, Nguyen delivered a simplified version of this to our staff yesterday, but these last two slides about, project delivery, and, you guys have come from the consulting world, right? So this, revenue collection and recognition, WIP, actually project delivery, this is like beat into our heads all the time if you come from consulting. This snapshot of where they sit in this and how this drives and contributes to our financial health, it's probably more, I guess, information than they've probably had insight into in the past. So we're trying to really coach our staff about how the work that they do and the importance of something as simple as how they fill out their timesheet really contributes to our financial health. And I'm not sure that focus was really solidly in place, under prior leadership, but we're really building that now, and it has made a huge turnaround in our financial health already. So we just kind of continue to try to give our staff some insights into where they sit with their contribution to not only the science that we do, but the financial health of our organization. And so these are really clear, kind of directives from our finance team. And that leaves into Ben.
I think as an addendum to that, a lot of our staff has been in academia or in research. They've never really had to deal with the financial component of projects. I think the financial project management aspect has been somewhat lacking. Nguyen is an excellent communicator, and I think is really helping break down some of those issues. I think we're only going to continue to see improved discipline and billing from our staff. I think folks are starting to really understand financial health, part of the science as well, not just doing the science. So I'm going to give a slightly larger drill down view of some of what Nguyen just went over. So I manage the outside revenue collection for UGS. We have about 55 to 65 active projects at any given time. Right now, it's about 20 federal projects, about 30 to 35 state level projects, and then another handful of projects with private companies. So all of that, we have to guess at the start of the year, how much do we think we're actually going to earn from our projects? When I first got to UGS, there was a somewhat systemic issue that we would consistently under project, or we'd over project by about 15 to 20%. At the end of the year, we would have collected 15 to 20% less revenue than we'd anticipated. Since we've started to put some financial controls in place and worked with our managers, we've gotten much, much better. This has been the best year since I got to UGS. We collected 96% of what we thought we would when it came to revenue. On the left side here, we have what we thought would happen at the very start of the fiscal year. We thought we'd do about 2.5 million in revenue for federal grants, about 2.4 million in revenue for state grants, known as transfers. We do just under $400,000 in dedicated credits, which are more or less the sale of services to private companies, and about $160,000 in expendable receipts, which are similar to dedicated credits, but the difference is not worth getting into. At the end of the year, we'd collected 5.3 out of our projected $5.5 million. This was the highest ever revenue year for UGS. Last year, fiscal year 25, was the previous high at about 4.3 million, so we surpassed that significantly. Granted, a lot of that was pass-through money where we receive a grant and pass money down to a collaborator. We don't necessarily earn on that, but it's still important to understand the scope and the scale of some of these projects. 5.3 million is a huge step increase for UGS. We collected the 5.3. It shifted a little bit from what we thought at the start of the year. We actually did a little bit more work for state contracts. We collected 2.6 million in transfer funds, only about 2.2, 2.3 in federal grants, but that's fine because those are ongoing. We didn't lose any opportunities there. And then dedicated credits were well below at only about $160,000 and about 246 for expendable receipts. This is a really strong year financially for UGS. Our staff got much better at timesheet discipline. We got much better at billing to the projects and stopping once they were overbilled. And it just feels like everything is tightening up a little bit. So for my role, these are the two numbers I kind of think the most about. Where are we saying we're going to be at the start of the year and where do we actually finish? So to get to that $1.2 million of carryover every year that keeps our budget healthy, it's really important that we stay on top of our outside awards. Another critical part of our budget is our grant match. We have all of these awards, but they're not all free. We're trying to chase smart money. We want to find projects where we're paying into the project as little as possible. In the past, our grant match got up to as high as $1.2 million. So this means out of that allotted $6 million of general funds, we're already committing 1.2 to grants. That means that if we have any projects we want to pursue that aren't necessarily funded by an outside award, we have $1.2 million less to pursue those, whether that's staff going to conferences, presenting, doing science that is not necessarily funded by an outside award, a trench study somewhere in the state. We reduced that capacity by $1.2 million. Over the last couple of years, we've instituted go, no-go kickoff meetings prior to project application. We've tried to chase smart money, a grant where we pay 50% cost share and don't receive our full indirect rate is not something that makes sense economically for us. We have to find projects that not only match the mission and scope of the UGS, but make sense financially. And we've gotten a lot better. So you can see on the left side of this graph, that is our scale for match. The y-axis shows how much we're paying out of general funds for match. And on the right side, the y-axis is our revenue. Revenue in green, match in red. Over the last few years, revenue has increased significantly from about $2.3 million to now about $5.3 million. Massive increase. Our grant match over that time has fluctuated, but we have brought it down from the high of $1.2 million to this year, we were just above $400,000 in grant match. That is now an additional $800,000 in our general funds we are not using and can be applied to other projects, can be applied to retain talent, hire good talent, and expand our operations. Reducing match is almost like finding new revenue. I see this as more or less $800,000 in additional revenue for UGS. I think in terms of our financial health, this is one of the most impactful things we've done in the last few years. This is a lot of cost savings. We're very proud of this. Our go, no-go meetings have been great. Staff has gotten a little bit better at scoping projects, and I think we're a little bit tighter when it comes to following our mission. We have a lot of grants. I don't want people's eyes to glaze over. I only wanted to show these two kind of primary big numbers because I think these are kind of the best KPIs for our grant and outside program financial health. Stop there. Questions, concerns?
What kind of leverage are you typically looking for a match? Like $2 to 1, 3 to 1?
So in the last couple of years, we've gotten a lot of grants that have 0% cost share for us. Earth MRI is a great example of that. A lot of the money that Mike and his team gets from DOE is between 0 and 20% cost share. 20% seems to be about the sweet spot for us. There's some state level contracts where we want to be good collaborators with other sister divisions. We'll throw in 50% match, but for the most part, 20 is about what we're aiming for, and with our full G&A.
Which grants have we been passing on?
You know,
That we were doing that we've cut out.
I think our emphasis on finding smart money has made our job a lot easier. Staff aren't bringing grants to us at this point that have a 50% cost share and limited G&A. We've turned down, I think, 1, maybe 2 projects that just felt more out of mission than out of financial compliance.
I will say a lot of that peak, the real high match period, that was related to data preservation. One particular grant that had a really high ceiling for a couple of years out of the Fed.
It's expensive money.
It is expensive money for what it is. We do still go, I will make, just because of the state map person, I will put out there that we still go after things like state map, which
State
are
maps at 50?
It's 50-50 and a reduced G&A, but the thing about something like state map is we can't, it is probably the most mission oriented.
It is
opportunity that
foundational.
we have, and it's like a Swiss Army knife. It gives us money to do things that are foundational to the survey all over, that there's no other way to pay for it. And so there's always going to be things like that we're going to go do.
Absolutely.
But it's
And
being choosy.
it's being smart about it, right? And we want to have room in our budget for projects like State Map. We want to have room in our projects for data preservation, right? Which is also a 50% grant, but maybe not $700,000 in match to scan aerial photos, right? Again, the questions I want to hear from our staff when they bring a grant proposal to us is it strategic? Is it in line with our statutory responsibilities, right? How expensive of the match is it, right? Are we looking at 50% match, 20% match, 10% match, nothing? What's our G&A on this? Do we have the staff bandwidth to actually get this work done? Or are you bringing this and saying, I'm going to need to hire 3 people? Which I think when we brought, a lot of these big data preservation grants in, we hired like 5 people. We're going to be really, really, really careful about doing that. So it's just kind of like, because there is an opportunity cost to us when we allocate $1.2 million in match. There is an opportunity cost for that. And we need to be sure that we're deploying that money, in alignment with what our responsibilities are to the state. Are we answering the mail with what the state needs from us? And so I think these go, no-go kickoffs have been really kind of a game changer for us. People are thinking through their project opportunities. We're mapping out, and some of these groundwater and wetlands, projects have like 2 to 3 years of staff, contribution, right? So we're mapping out into 2030 at this point for some of these grants. And so we're looking at, when you start adding up those staff hours, we can start to see really quickly, well, is this person going to get overcommitted in 2028? And what does that mean? We have also used this as an opportunity to make sure that some of our other project contributors are included in the funding. Our data management team has done a lot of heavy lifting on projects. Their costs were not originally included in a lot of our grants. And so we've brought in the data management team and their piece of it into the funding, to the point where our data management team is now 30% grant funded, because their piece of the work in creating the databases behind it and pushing out, websites and stuff is now acknowledged in that grant. It's covered in the grant costs. And so their work is now being funded as well. So we're just a lot smarter, and we're bringing in kind of the whole pieces of the project. So this has been great for our financial outlook. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it. So.
What does a go, no-go meeting look like? Is that a dedicated committee for certain areas or for the whole UGS?
It's almost like investment committee for a funding body.
Right.
We sit down with the leadership team. We have the principal investigator for the project come in, their manager. They've been putting together PowerPoints, which has made it a lot easier. Yeah, pretty much a pitch deck. We sit down, we go over the project, who's working on it, how many hours, what do their hours budgets look like for the next couple of fiscal years? Does this make sense? Is this project on scope? Is the science that is a priority for us and for the state? We pretty much go through a couple of different points there and then say, okay, is this a project that makes sense for us to pursue? And UGS has a pretty darn good track record when it comes to applying for and winning projects, probably 80 to 90%. So we try and start as early as we can. Is this smart money? Is this a smart project? So we sit down, there's usually 5 or so of us in the room, and it's a pretty good discussion. I like that staff takes it really seriously.
They come pretty well prepared for this.
So they
So,
do.
and Ben's usually had a peek at the budget already, kind of helped them kind of stack the budget. So he's usually already got some insider info. I've usually been to buzz in the office about an opportunity. There's been a couple that have been kind of concerned. So, we're careful.
Yeah, we have passed on things, right? We have
passed on things.
By and large, the majority of these are approved, but we have passed on things.
Passed a few things. This is where I've, from doing these where, Stephen Odd was hired into our wetlands team because I looked at, Becca is our wetlands manager, and I looked at her team and the work that they had coming, and I was like, you're gonna need some help here, right? So you're gonna need some help. We've been watching Christian's workload with geothermal, and, Mike was like, if these two projects land and you just saw them on your proposal list, two big DOE projects, if they land, we're gonna need some help. So we're actually reallocating one staff person who's internal here. She's a TL, moving that person into the E&M team to support that, as well as probably advertising a project geologist position to help that team as well. So, yeah, if we can redeploy staff, we will. So, but yeah, I think they've really helped us. And for me as a director, it also connects me to the project work that people are doing. I understand more about what's out there, and what type of work we're doing and what's driving that. Any other questions about our finances?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks you guys. We won't, again, this is kind of a year-end closeout. We won't have too much of some in-depth financial reports for the next little while. So I'll move to our next item. Oh, I meant to talk about this while Brian was here, but we got so caught up in talking about everything else. We are recruiting an additional board member. This was a result of the statutory intent language change that we requested last year to add a groundwater resources member. We were going to swap that out for a minerals seat. Brian actually pushed back and, to the legislature, was like, I don't want to lose a minerals seat. Let's add a seat to UGS's board. So we are recruiting a replacement now for this mineral industry open seat. So I'll just put it out to you guys after our board field trip, which we're going to talk about next. We will begin kind of canvassing. If you have people that you think would make great board members, ideally someone who is connected to the minerals industry on the exploration side, so they can really help us understand, that industry and what they need from UGS. So I'll just kind of put that out there. I know you guys all know people, so, and we'll work with Brian to kind of get that out there also.
So not industrial minerals? So not industrial minerals?
What did I say? Did I say industrial minerals?
Yeah,
Yes, industrial minerals.
Yeah,
Oh, industrial, okay.
I think that was the intent.
Not metallic, yes.
That's sort of.
Yeah, we are looking for somebody, and that was discussed in our last board meeting here about, where should we fill that seat? And, looking at the current makeup of our board, which I love, I think we have a lot of, the industries that we work with pretty well covered. So our agreement was to look on the industrial side. And we will look for your help with that. Okay, just two more topics here. Our field trip overview, and then let's take a look after this at our 2027 board meeting dates. So if you remember, our field trip is the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yeah.
So 2 nights.
Yeah, a little longer one this year. I think, has everybody RSVP'd and
Okay.
got reservations? So this one's a unique opportunity. We're kind of leaning in. So the board members will fly down to Cayena on the state plane. We've got that booked. It's moderately affordable. We'll have a ground crew that'll meet you guys in Cayena, which is just south of the Utah line in northern Arizona near Monument Valley. And then that first day, we're going to drive up into the Utah part of Monument Valley, and we're going to look at the old Jetto 7.5 quads and the geology there. We'll do basically typical field geology. We're gonna hike through the Permo-Triassic section. We're gonna talk geoscience, basically. There are some resource-related issues down there related to uranium that we'll deal with. That'll be the majority of our first day. When we're done walking around on the ground in El Jetta, we will get in the vehicles and we'll start to head north. We'll probably have one intermediary stop in Mexican Hat, and we'll talk about petroleum history there and stratigraphy a little bit, bathroom break. We will likely have dinner in Bluff. Our best options are in Bluff, so we'll stop and have dinner before we get to the hotel in Blanding. We'll stay up in Blanding at the Stone Lizard, which is a really nice hotel. Wake up in Blanding, and then the next day, we wanted to start on resources, basically. And I was hoping to do most of that day in Lisbon Valley with Mike. Mike's volunteered to help us out with that. Potentially go to the Mi Vida uranium mine, and then also the copper mine there. And then also some overview kind of regional geology. We have that critical minerals mill is still on there. We tried to remove that yesterday. That is an option that I guess if the board is really interested in, maybe we could tour the White Mesa mill in Blanding, but it would really cut into our ability to go to Lisbon Valley and spend time there. So I
think we would have to choose either White Mesa or the copper mine.
Yeah, sorry, we edited
We
this
were-
slide yesterday to take the.
Yeah, that
White
shouldn't
Mesa mill
actually be
off.
in there.
So Lisbon Valley is also where the mine that Brian mentioned, the Mariana mine, new copper mine is as well. That Lisbon Valley copper mine's been rebranded.
Yeah, we were leaning towards the copper mine just
Yeah.
because it's a little bit more geology than seeing a processing mill. But this is the board field.
Yeah, that's really what the point of this discussion here is. What do you folks think about that? Are you okay with this idea of really making that second day focusing on Lisbon Valley and sort of Paradox Basin stuff near there?
So I'm unable to go, but I would recommend you guys go to the copper mine. They've done some cool things there.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Andy.
Okay, I'll take that as an affirmative towards.
I think it's better to go look in the field.
Yeah. Okay,
at
cool.
the ore body instead of
Yeah.
a process.
Yeah, that's the input I was hoping for. So that will be formally scratched out at this stage. So we really well focus at Lisbon Valley. We'll probably add in a stop or two related to stratigraphy and then structure in the Paradox Basin. There's a couple good ones that we can tack on before and then after Lisbon Valley. So we'll go to Lisbon Valley, tack on a couple stops, and then that evening we end up in Moab. So we'll be staying in Moab, dinner in Moab, and then wake up in Moab, and Friday will be our return day. I was talking to Mike about this morning. Friday, we'll do a couple morning stops on Northern Paradox Basin resources. So potentially a stop at the Big Flat Field, which is on the way to Island in the Sky. And then definitely a stop near Crystal Geyser at their site of recent coring. And we'll bring along some of those cores, pull them out and talk about that piece of work. And then after that, we'll get in the vehicles and boogie back to Salt Lake so we can get you guys back here at 5 at the latest on Friday.
So we got you for two nights this time. So 3 days, 2 pretty long days, because we're going to ask you to meet at General Aviation at 8 a.m.
You'll also be driving through a lot of Mancos and some of that recent Mancos stuff, which is a huge interest right now in Eastern Utah, a lot of drilling. A lot of lease dollars.
Yes.
A lot of lease dollars that come to you guys.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment because Kirkland has some stops that would be north of Green River that we might be able to tack one of those on.
Depending on what you wanted to see, there's something right off the highway that's really good.
That's a good idea.
On the
And
Mancos,
some that have shark teeth that are also kind of fun.
There's some good
That could be-
stratigraphy in there.
that could be a good idea.
That's a great suggestion.
That's our board field trip this fall. We'll have more details coming up. We need to do some dry run and we've got some meetings to figure out some of the details. But I think we're all booked for rooms. We're booked for the plane and this general itinerary. So it should be a good one. This is a really rare chance to go see the Monument Valley geology on foot. It's really pretty. It's showy, and Matthew's got some new age information about that Permo-Triassic contact and the units that join it or don't to join it. That's really interesting that he'll share.
There's an important groundwater study in El Jeto also. You know, one of the drivers for doing this mapping was to assist the Navajo Nation with understanding their water resources there. So a really key use of this mapping is to help, you know, a community that's really, you know, challenged, understand their water resources and make some pretty key decisions about where to spend some of their funds.
We were really excited about this collaboration with the Navajo Nation for the Geological Quad. This is the first of its kind mapping on the nation. We went to them and said, how can your priorities direct our science? And they said, we need help with groundwater. So we actually put out a press release about this yesterday announcing the map is out and published. USGS has shared it broadly across their accounts. They're very proud of this collaboration. It's funded by the state map program. This is really, really excellent work from UGS. Very jealous you folks are getting to go down and check it out.
We've built a great relationship with them, and it's one of the focal points of mapping going forward. We're really going to work on Southeastern Utah, finish up those 30 by 60s. Bluff, we'll be starting on Bluff in part of the Bluff 30 by 60 in September.
And to just close the loop on that, you know, grant match conversation, you know, for me as a director, that is a really great investment of our dollars, is to support that 50% match for a project like that. That is where I like to see our general fund money, you know, being deployed. I can't think of a more, you know, strategically and statutorily important project than something like that, where, you know, a community is able to use that mapping to make decisions about a really important resource. Okay, well, look forward to that. You guys don't have to bring your bedrolls like we did for Fish Springs. We get to eat out. We don't need coolers full of food. We saved a lot of money on that trip because we didn't pay hotel fees, so we'll use it on this trip for the planes. Great investment. I'm really looking forward to the time we get to spend with you guys. So, okay, that brings us to future board meetings. We'll map these out. I asked Cheryl to put some suggested dates on here. This is basically based on what we've been doing in the past, where we have our board meeting in the first week or two of the month. I'm gonna be honest with you that we have our staff meeting on the first or second Tuesday. And so what winds up happening is that I've got board meetings stacked on top of staff meeting. Our staff meeting was yesterday. And these are both really important opportunities for us to engage with people, right? I really like the opportunity to engage with our staff. Love the opportunity to engage with you. I'd like to suggest maybe we spread those out a little bit. So we could look at doing our board meetings the third week of the month. This also puts us, you know, everybody's coming back from the holidays on this date and trying to remember what they do for a living. And so again, this is your meeting, so I'll let you guys kind of think about these dates. But it would be great to, you know, calendar these, and we can get them on your calendars.
13th works better for me.
And those are the first and second weeks.
These are the first and second. So, you know, add a week. And we can go back and forth too. We're not carved into stone here. So
I think I would say that I would offer a little later in each month. Generally will work better for us. We'll have less conflicts with our staff meeting, or at least less stacking. There's not necessarily conflict, just makes a bunch of big meetings back to back.
Does anybody have any conflicts later in the month?
January 6th is looking at no-go.
Okay.
What about the 20th?
How about, so yeah, do you want to check your calendars for the 20th? And Cheryl, will you? Thanks so much. And then Cheryl, when we get some dates down, Cheryl will send out a calendar invite so we block off your mornings. So the 20th.
Yes.
20th works?
April 21, can we just do it for all of them?
If you guys, okay, so January 20th, April 21, August 25th.
So the important point here is that we'd be moving to the
Third.
Wednesday of the third week, basically, in the month.
Mike brings up an important point. The legislative session starts on 19th.
Legislative session starts on the 19th.
Traditionally or historically, we haven't presented until the third week.
But you never know.
But you never know.
So there maybe we will have to consider an adjustment here of doing a board meeting right before, the week before the legislature
You won't be on.
Nice.
Yeah, well, okay, right, we have the controller of presentation, Dave, sitting here with us, so do we need to be at that first meeting?
It's just
Do you
if you
think
want
committee
to
meeting?
have the board meeting right at the start of the session or the week before the session.
You probably don't need to be at that first session. I can be, someone else can be.
Yeah, we can certainly find a way to cover it and do the board meeting. It's just whether we have
We can just do that meeting on the 13th
and do
do
the
the
other
rest.
ones on the third.
What if we do
third
this
week.
one on the 13th, then do the rest of them on the third week? You guys okay on the 13th? Is that too?
January?
Yeah, and if we need to, we'll move staff meeting on that one. Okay, January 13th. Neil, is that gonna be okay with whatever you had on your
Yeah, I just have a
calendar?
conference on the 6th through like whatever the end of the week.
You okay spending the morning with us on the 13th?
Yeah, the 13th should be fine. That's the following week, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's okay.
Okay,
And in August, the 18th is actually the third week. Our staff meeting is the 10th because it starts really beginning of the month. So, okay, the 25th would be the fourth week. That's fine if you want to do it then, whatever. Just same.
Why don't we stick with that third week?
You'll
So
stick
that
with
would be
the
the
third. Okay,
18th.
so January 13th,
Yep, January 13th
April 21st,
and August 18th.
and August 18th. Does that work for everyone? Yes. Okay,
Okay, I'll send out
Let's do it.
invites this afternoon.
okay, thank you very much, yeah. And then board field trip, I don't know, let's talk about it on this field trip. We'll talk about where to take you guys.
Wasatch back, I'll put that out there. We've got a bunch
Easy
of
one?
new stuff that's happened. What it could be like Cache Valley and down, more of a local trip.
Okay.
That's an option.
I so much.
I like it.
A little cheaper.
Getting cheaper, yeah, would offset the
Well,
cost.
We'll spread the plane cost out over 3 years.
So I had one last point before we formally close quickly. The geologic mapping group is overseen by a state map advisory council.
Oh, right.
That has a chairperson. That is currently Becky. She is more or less ready to step down from that role.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say I've been the chair of the SMAC for 6 years. I keep thinking it's 8 years because I was a member of the SMAC for 2 years when I was working. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Okay, I've been the chair for 6 years. Well, maybe somebody else on the board would like the opportunity because it's fun, it's interesting, and now Stefan has it down to the science. I mean, he's got the process worked out. It's efficient. They get all their deliverables in on time. It's great. So I thought just maybe it was time for me to see if anybody else would like to do it.
Yeah, and we've almost always had, well, I should say, as far as I can tell, we have always had a SMAC chair that has been a board member, either current or past. It's a really good fit for this role because you understand the survey and you broadly understand what's going on in Utah. The actual commitment comes down to basically we have a half-day meeting in late October that you attend and kind of run as a chairperson, where we go over the program and then what our proposal will be. And then after that, you prepare a letter of support, basically, for our proposal. Those are the two primary tasks. So it's a relatively low lift. I put it out there to this group. Again, I would really love if one of the board members would be willing.
What's your date in October?
I think it's we haven't quite set that. We usually do it either Monday or Tuesday of the final week of October.
You do Tuesday instead of Monday.
That,
I'd love to sign up.
if you're interested, I mean, again, I think you, Riley, you could be a wonderful candidate for this.
I'm opinionated about that.
Whatever that is.
Well, and
and that's, and actually, that's what we're looking for,
That's
right?
exactly what
And,
we
and
want.
actually, any of you guys would make great SMAC members as well. And the input is really important. Where do we go next? And what are the drivers for where we're mapping, right? Is it development related? Is it industry related, right? Riley is vocal and opinionated and as you all should be.
Yeah, the committee is a group. Right now, I think we have 20 people who are on the committee. It's state folks who are, have some invested interest in mapping.
Doug's probably on it.
No, Doug is not. We had the previous mappers commonly attend, some of the retired folks, interestingly enough. We have representatives from all the universities and then all the principal kind of areas of geologic work like groundwater, hazards, minerals, oil and gas, all that kind of stuff. So
BLM, Forest Service.
BLM, Forest Service, the federal partners.
None of the users.
Yep, that's the goal, is to get the user community and make sure that whatever we're doing with mapping or field geology in the state is relevant.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're hired as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, wow.
You're worth everything.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, this kind of, the insights that you guys bring are important for us, right? We don't work in a vacuum and we're not sitting around here doing science for the sake of doing science. We have a mission and we want to make sure that, you know, we're going in the right direction. The sport is a great piece of that for us, so.
Oh, and just got the award from USGS.
Yeah, we did. I didn't see that on our thing, but we had a record state map award. Highest we've ever had, so it's 660 for 2 years of federal money, so total value is about 1.3 worth of mapping, and then we funded a bunch of, because state map is like a Swiss Army knife, we funded some other interesting things, a 3D study on the Mancos in the Uinta Basin that Ryan Gall will do, and then a stratigraphic study of the Cedar Mountain Formation with Jim Kirkland to try to capture his knowledge of that unit. So it'll technically start in like November, or not November, sorry, September.
That's gonna make our match grant curve go back up again.
Not significantly.
I'm not afraid of grant match. It's, you know, it's what we do, right? We just want to make sure that it's really strategically deployed.
We was lucky because, as Steph mentioned, we have those 0%, that the offset from the
To offset.
and the building block.
Match will be comparable next year.
Yeah, I mean, most of the match that you're seeing there is state map anyway. And state map is remarkably consistent. We always get plus or minus about 10% of that amount. So it's usually 600-ish K worth of match to fund it.
Any questions or follow-ups before we close out? Any thoughts from Brian's presentation or our finances or anything else that you? Yes.
This isn't profound or anything, but I have a little house in Moab and I might be down there in October, and I want to go on the field trip, obviously, but if I do decide to do that, can I just be there,
Yes.
get picked up by the
You could get
people
picked up
driving
by
through?
the.
For sure, it's as opposed to take the plane, yeah, because we do have the two of the cars we'll have to drive to the day before. So the one catch would be, if you are gonna do that, let us know, we'll need to get you a room in Monument Valley for the 6th.
Okay, I will make that decision in the next week.
Okay.
Get back.
Okay, let us know, because I'll free up a spot on the plane, so we might do some math.
There you go.
You know that. Okay, all right.
It's just a great time to be down there, so.
It is a great time to be out there, and yeah, if you want to get picked up on the way, it'll cut into your time a little bit, because they'll pick you up a day earlier. Because everybody has, the vehicles have to be down
Right.
there. It's a haul to get down there.
Yeah.
So sure, yeah, whatever works out for you. Is everybody else on board with riding down on the state plane? I'll just go back to this. Everybody else is planning on coming.
You're cool with
committed.
us just leaving the cars here at the Core Center the whole time?
Yes. No, you'll be leaving, yes, you'll be meeting here, so your cars will be secured behind the gate. Then we will carpool you over to general aviation, which is where the state plane takes off from. You'll get a safety briefing before you hop on the plane. It is a small plane, so yeah, it's not a jet, it's a Beechcraft, I think.
When you
So-
park, I suggest not parking along the fence line because we've had damaged vehicles right along the fence line. So park kind of in the parking lot area.
So.
I guess they can throw things.
Yeah, stones
That's
throw
my
away
issue.
from the fence.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a neighborhood. There is some talk, we're starting to talk formally about this DNR campus relocating. So, including the course center. So it's coming for us. We will probably need some sort of building block or something when it comes time to think about a new home for the course center. It's expensive to move.
2 to 3 years. The core center is a big thing that we will probably need, we're gonna need board help to make sure that we get it done properly.
I'm afraid they're gonna downsize us too, because life sucks and then we die,
I'm glad you brought that up, because this is a topic that we might want to address in more detail at a future board meeting, kind of planning about this potential move, right? And what it's gonna take, because the core center is a big deal.
It is a big deal. We have dealer leadership on board. They realize how important this facility is. But it's coming. And so I think we just need to plan for it. Do the cost to move, I've asked Ammon and Mike to put together a pretty comprehensive proposal about what we need for a new core center facility, like needs and wants, right? Larger education center, better court viewing area, better temperature control. So I think this is a plus for us. On the downside, it's just gonna be painful to go through it. So more capacity, we're turning core away that we could be bringing in. So I actually think that this is a great opportunity for us. It's gonna be hard. We're gonna need a little help from the legislature to move. I don't know if yes, you have been back there. So Lacey has seen what's back there. So we'll work together on that. But again, I'm optimistic about the outcome for this.
You guys staying in Salt Lake Valley? You going to Tula Valley?
The court, yes. Yeah, possibly just right down the street.
It's very likely that we'll be in this northwest quadrant part of Salt Lake.
And there's a
By the
lot,
prison. You'll be by the
there is a
prison.
lot of existing
Well,
warehouses.
We'll see, we don't want to.
Yeah, we'll be okay. Really appreciate it.
Very good.
Chair?
Very good, thank you. Awesome.
Where's the prison? Well, it's gonna be easy for Mike, because it's right by the.
We need to formally.
We need to adjourn. Meeting is 12:10 and we formally now, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you
That was
very
really
much.
good.
Thanks, everyone.
Let's get back to Brian.
Yeah, it's a longer board meeting. I appreciate the time. It's a longer board meeting. Yeah, it is good.